Think I'm live? Does seem like I'm live. Make a post about this. Alright, gonna give this a moment while folks trickle in. Not sure if we're gonna get a ton, but anyone we do get, it's nice to have. And really, more the goal is just to have this up and accessible for anyone who might want this resource. Um, I have something very similar to what I'm covering today, just a lot less audio focused and a lot more of a spreadsheet. I made a spreadsheet for the first Pauper tournament where I copy pasted the image file for every single common in Revolution to that point, everything up through Awakening and Uldoon. And I I don't quite have that up for this right here moment by any means. I don't have that on hand. But I wanted to sort of cover, we have gotten 9 sets since the last time we did a Pauper GP. We got the Pauper GP was the April of Awakening in Uldoon. We were in the midst of a Pauper GP when Cyberos was announced as the incumbent set. And of course, that's the set that most recently rotated out. So we are currently we had a full standard cycle, Cyberos through Solstier, without Pauper Eternal. So that's a stretch of time with no Pauper whatsoever. So there's 9 sets worth of commons to shake up the field. So my thinking was I wanted to dive through. Originally, I wanted to make a scripted video covering, here's everything that these new sets are giving us. I wrote down every single card I could think of from each of these sets that struck me as like remotely worth talking about. Ultimately, I just don't have the time to script a video like that. I don't know what the patch is going to have in store for tomorrow, if there's going to be anything substantial for a patch. Anyways, I don't know if I have it in me to make a patch review video right now. I think at this point, with my absence being what it has been, I'm kind of just saving my energy for the next set announcement so I can do a set review for that and kind of come back to form in that way. But in the interim, if no, patch review video, if no, like, formally structured, what's new in Pauper Eternal, I can at least try and do this. I can at least try and do something streamed, something kind of a little looser. Let me just adjust my microphone. Something a little looser, just kind of going through the commons from each set and pausing to talk about things that I think might be notable. We have we have some very important cards across some of these sets that I think are very, very important to getting an understanding of how Pauper Eternal looks to be shaping up. I have not gotten the opportunity to play much Pauper Eternal. I know people have been playtesting a lot, so this is purely theory on my part, coupled with a bit of understanding from what I've seen people discussing. Unfortunately, there's not going to be a lot of play experience backing a lot of my conclusions that I draw here. But, obviously I've played with a good number of these cards outside of Pauper Eternal contexts, and I got to the top cut of the last Pauper Eternal GP. I was the one person who brought a Diabolical Minion deck without being mono black. I feel pretty comfortable in my read on how Pauper Eternal functions. even in a version of Pauper Eternal that has no diabolical minion. So I guess before we dive into any of that, I do want to talk about the elephant in the room, which is diabolical minion. So before we can talk about the sets that we got since the last Pauper Eternal GP, we need to talk about what we have lost in Pauper Eternal. And the most important thing we have lost is Diabolical Minion. This is the only card banned in Eternal Pauper, for those of you who are unaware. Single black 1/1 human minion. When you cast a black spell or an artifact spell, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. When you cast a non-black, non-artifact spell, you lose 1 life. This card overran the entirety of the field last time around. Our top cut was 6 players. 4 of the 6 top decks were Diabolical Minion decks. Neither of the top 2 decks were Diabolical Minion decks. The top 2 decks that made it to the finals took out all of the Diabolical Minion mono black decks, or in my case, blue black decks. All of us got eliminated before the finals. But the fact of the matter is, Diabolical Minion was ever present in the last GP. It was the thing to beat. It says a lot about how strong Burn was, and I think it still is. It says a lot about how strong Burn was and is, that a deck built around a 1-drop that gains you life for each spell you cast while also killing your opponent was not even remotely enough to help rein in a matchup where your opponent's whole game plan is take your life total from 20 to 0. Having 4 copies of the 1-drop that gains you life for every spell you play forever could not shore things up at all. I will forever feel awkward about my misplays in my quarterfinals match against Cool Beans. Incredible that I spent several hours playtesting for that match and only learned in the moment in the actual match. I just want to make sure I pull this card up because I want to make sure I get it right. I know it's Renegade something. Renegade Apprentice. I wanted to say Renegade Apprentice, but that sounded wrong. The fact that this thing gains first strike was something I did not know until going into until actively playing the match. I made a block thinking like, oh, I'll trade my 2 power creature with Renegade Apprentice, and Cool Beans was like, cool, so your thing dies and mine lives, and I was like, huh? Oh god, I spent hours playtesting for this matchup and I never caught this thing gains first strike. This thing is ridiculous. So this is going to be on my mind through a lot of talked about like what red has access to. Is I think Renegade Apprentice is one of the most important creatures in mono red, and you know, this makes blocking mono red really, really damn annoying. But yeah, so Diabolical Minion is gone. What does that mean for mono black? What does that mean for black decks in general? Because Diabolical Minion, I think one of the most important things that it did was it put pressure on anyone looking to play black and said, hey, why are you bothering playing other colors alongside this? Why would you ever want to play other colors alongside this? The conclusion that I came to was that there were some blue-black cards, few and far between as they were, that I felt like were worthwhile. But they were still black spells, so they still triggered Diabolical Minion. The only mono blue card I had in the deck was a counterspell on the sideboard. And I stand by it. I think that was still a good call overall. It didn't really hurt me too much to have access to that alongside Diabolical Minion. But it gave me access to more hard removal, and gave me access to an evasive threat that could fill my graveyard because my deck was also leaning on graveyard themes. Otherwise, people pretty much stayed solidly mono black on Diabolical Minion. I think they were right too. The fact of the matter really is ultimately just that Diabolical Minion warped what black was up to in the format in a pretty hostile way. So I think it is a deserving ban, even if it was not one of the top 2 decks in the end of that GP. I think it was a deserving ban for the sake of improving like diversity of strategies. Black not being so ham-fisted into just being Diabolical Minion decks is really important. But mono black in particular really suffers for this banning. So I think there are still some good things going in mono black. We'll keep an eye on what, like, mono black tools that we are getting in this cycle. I do want to put a focus before we carry on that there are a pair of mono black creatures at 2 mana in Ukshu Task Mage and Onfen Channeler, which do kind of being an important operative term there, kind of keep the diabolical minion spirit alive in so far as draining the opponent for each of your like game actions. However, rather than caring about black and artifact spells, Onfen Channeler cares about enchantments you control entering, and Ukshu Task Mage cares about enchantments you control being put into a graveyard from the battlefield. Each of them drains the opponent. They're 2-drops instead of 1-drops, which is important. They're both bears, which is solid enough. And Onfan Channeler even has lifelink. We'll cover why that might be relevant. I do think there is something to do here. I think Errors in the Weft in particular is really nice for these 2 cards because, Errors has a good number of enchantment synergies. I think these cards can help keep the idea of Diabolical Minion alive, and we are going to be talking about these cards here and there moving forward, but they are not Diabolical Minion. And I think the best way to play these cards is not going to be in mono black. So keep that all in mind, and let's start things off with Cyberos. So we're going to sort by commons, and it's going to sort by play rate. We're going to sort by set number. We're going to do ascending because it would be starting us at basic lands otherwise. And the first thing we need to touch on with Cyberos is colorless spells. Now, unfortunately, though Cyberos in regular Eternal does benefit from colorless not being a new concept, I don't think many of the colorless cards in Cyberos really get a lot of Eternal play. I think in that regard, Vast-Doom's colorless cards are better. In Pauper Eternal, Vast-Doom's colorless matters commons are pretty mediocre. I think the best of them are like actually colored spells with a colorless activated ability. Let me pull one up here. Because I know... Yeah, End Times Pilgrim is, I think, one of the best colorless matters synergies, and it's really just asking you to have a colorless source amongst your 7 mana in, like, a big mana deck where this can just be, like, a way to keep reusing your resources and never running out of gas. We do have some big mana decks. We have Defenders, and we have Monument. Granted, those are both kind of positioning themselves to be combo decks more than mid-range or value decks. But I do think big mana decks could exist. We have the plot lands. I think there is room for a rampy big mana strategy to exist in Pauper Eternal. End Times Pilgrim could be a reason for that deck to try and skew towards colorless. So there is merit to thinking about colorless mattering in some capacity. Unfortunately, Atomize is not a reason to care for that. I think I don't think any of these decks are going to be solely colorless, and as a result, I think a lot of these decks are going to have better removal to turn to than to double colorless, exile, and permanent. I do want to stop and talk about Cast Reflection, because I don't think we really have any clone effects at common. Like, taking a moment here, format Eternal, rarity common, create a token. We have Twin Call Chant, which makes a token that's a copy of a token. We have Cast Reflection, which is new. And then we have a bunch of Bless cards that come up here. So this is really our only clone effect in the format. And I mean, like, full clone effect, because yes, Twin Call Chant can clone with big air quotes, but it has to be something that's already a token itself. Cast Reflection is a proper clone effect. The big challenge there is what commons in Pauper are you really looking to clone necessarily? And that's something I don't necessarily have an immediate answer for, but I do think this is something that could be a very, very desirable effect, if not for this Pauper Eternal, something to keep in mind for Pauper Eternals in the future should we ever get a common that is so good you want to have ways to get more of them in play than just the 4 copies you get in your deck. So not necessarily something that's going to be a huge game changer right now, but if someone figures out a way for this to matter, it's awesome. And if someone figures out a way for this to matter with sets that come in the future for a future visit to Pauper Eternal, I think this could be a game changer. First Contact is also probably our best colorless card. It is a colorless cantrip, and if you have no creatures, you make a 1/1 artifact creature token. Quite simply, an early colorless play for a colorless Matters deck is important. This gives you a board presence if you have none. It is a cantripping 1/1 for 1 mana, which is something you don't really get at 1 mana, especially at common. We have plenty of 2-drops that draw a card when they enter, and those are certainly more abusable than it being a token with a spell, sorcery that draws you a card. But the fact of the matter still is that this is really solid value. I think if you're on colorless, First Contact is something you're at least considering. No promises that it's something you care for necessarily, but at the very least, I think First Contact is worth keeping in mind should you have any reason to care about colorless. Hey Chipmunk, yeah, I'm back. I said at the start of the stream, because the goal here is less about like people have to tune into the stream to get this information and more about just having the VOD out there so people have this as a resource. Goal here is go through all of the new Pauper Eternal cards we've gotten since the last Eternal GP, starting with Cyberos. Kind of just winging it. I wanted to make this a structured video. I just don't have it in me to script all of what this would require for it to be a full structured video. That's more than a set review's worth of effort, and I know there's going to be a set review that I'm invariably going to be coming back and doing properly next month. So trying to save that energy for that and do this as a more impromptu bit instead. Yeah, so starting with Cyberos set order, First Contact, I think is great. I think it's great. If you have a reason to care about colorless, I think it's great. The if is the big problem there. Because, again, I don't think Vastoom's reasons to care about colorless, at least its colorless spells, are all that good. Again, though, I do think End Times Pilgrim could be a reason to genuinely care. So, Hivecast Vukarok is not bad. It's not amazing. I'm not going to sit here and say that this is a revolutionary, no pun intended, revolutionary effect, but I mean, this could be a reason to care about that clone effect I mentioned. 2 mana, 2/1 that's a 3/3 if you have another creature with the same name. Certainly is something that if you are playing it, you are playing a playset, and could be a reason to want Cast Reflection. So you wind up with a 4/5. Is a 4 mana 4/5 that is dependent on you playing a 2 mana 2/1 that could potentially be a 3/3 amazing? It's stats. I do think if we ever see a version of Pauper Eternal that has enough support to do a proper colorless deck, this might be a legitimate card for something like that. I don't think in this current iteration it is worthwhile, and that's kind of the running theme of these colorless cards. I think First Contact's great. I think Cast Reflection is pretty solid. I think Hivecast Vukarok is fine. It's why are we caring about colorless? And so far, these are all just bonuses if you're in colorless. Really, Cast Reflection is the thing that would be why you care about colorless. And right now, without a solid idea of what we're looking to clone, that's with big air quotes. In essence, is very much in the same boat as Atomize. I think if you're running colorless trying to get good interaction, you're approaching it wrong. Being able to exile a permanent spell is not nothing. Stack interaction when you're not playing blue is good. Having access to stack interaction without having to be in blue is nice. I don't think this is going to be like foundational to your colorless deck. This might be something you try in the sideboard and then probably steer away from because it is still 3 mana for a counter spell that does not counter all card types. So I don't think this is going to be where you want to be. I do think instant adaptation could be interesting. Just protect a permanent from a card name until end of turn and scry 2. One of the things that's on my mind that I think is very funny is I have spent a lot of time thinking about flicker decks, because one of our best cantrips in Eternal is an aura that draws you a card, lets the land that you enchant make additional mana. This can strip auras off of something. You target the land that Kaleidoscape is on, name, or that Kaleidoscape is targeting even, and name Kaleidoscape, and they just don't get the Kaleidoscape on there. I don't know if that's super relevant when they're casting the Kaleidoscape. I don't recall directly if you would get the enter trigger. I believe you still would, so it would not deny the card draw. And if there's anybody who's more familiar with the rules on that, off the top of my head, I don't recall specifically. So if anyone has a better recollection, please tell me where I might be wrong in chat. But it would be more about like if someone's trying to flicker Kaleidoscape, you can instant adaptation their land, cause the Kaleidoscape to fall off, and blank the flicker, attempting to generate card advantage. Otherwise, it's a fine protection spell. It might be like a sideboard tool, but again, the colorless problem. It's a solid God's Willing effect. Scry 2 instead of Scry 1 is nice. Having to choose a specific card name rather than a color is a bit of a stinger, but being able to choose any permanent instead of a creature is also nice. You can protect your enchantments from removal. So yeah. Instill Void is another one that's weird. Whenever enchanted creature deals or is dealt damage, exile it. I mean, if we ended up with a deck with like a bunch of pingers, hold on, no, loses life, loses life, loses life. Nope. Instill Void does not matter for those. Instill Void. It would not have mattered for Diabolical Minion. It does not matter for Ukshu-Task Mage, and it does not particularly matter for Onfen Channeler. It matters in the sense that it's a 1-mana enchantment that will naturally put itself into your graveyard, so it's 1 mana cheap to put it into play for Onfen Channeler. Relatively easy to have it wind up in your graveyard for Ukshu-Task Mage. I don't think you're reaching for this. There are better 1-mana auras that you can lean on that don't require you to be in colorless. But it's not awful. I do think Leyline Leecher is solid. Air quotations again. Like I can keep going over it all day. Colorless, I think, has a lot going for it. In the hypothetical, it does not have enough reason for you to dedicate a part of your deck to it. I think Leyline Leecher is fine. 1 mana, 2/1 flyer, if you can integrate an instant or sorcery, is amazing. I think if blue colorless wasn't such a nightmare of a mana base, like a blue colorless tempo deck, like using Leyline Leecher as a cheap evasive threat would be awesome. It's not gonna matter. Blue has better tempo threats to lean on that don't demand it to play colorless fixing. But I don't know. I want to see these colorless cards get some play. I don't think they're gonna. I think Masked Envoy is the most skippable of these. It's another reasonable aggro threat with big air quotations because you're playing colorless in an aggro deck. That Rubino, I can't imagine it's that bad. It's more that like we just don't have any good colorless fixing. You have a bunch of fetches that get Wastes Island. Yeah, it's not about like we don't have good ways to find blue or colorless sources. It's a lot of the blue tempo pieces want to be like cheap blue spells, and any wastes in your deck is a land that just cannot play your blue cards. You cannot play your cantrips off of a waste. You cannot play your blue 1-drops off of a wastes, and that stings when you are a low curve tempo deck trying to end the game through only having so many resources available to you. Any colorless lands you see that can't cast your spells just wind up hurting your overall ability to close out games. My understanding is tempo is often trying to play a small game, trying to deny the game from getting to a point where resources just accumulate and you end up in the control hells of just constant, draw, go, exchange, interaction, fight for every inch. It is more like we are just trying to keep you off your foot for long enough to get you dead and hope that you do not find cards that matter. And every time you end up with a colorless source that cannot cast your spells, that is risking giving your opponent more room and a bigger window to try and get their footing underneath them. And that's not a risk I think tempo wants to take. Yeah, so I think Masked Envoy is fine. I want Leyline Leecher to thrive, but again, the concern with blue colorless. Savage Wild Beast, I really, really want to like. Unfortunately, it's hexproof from permanence, which means it stops auras from enchanting it. It can't be blown up by the Ravenous Chupacabra we don't have. This does just get hit by some of the new removal we've got, and we've got some very good new removal. The most notable thing here is that our many good banishing light effects cannot touch this. So white struggles to remove this, but I don't think that is enough reason to want to be on this. It's not a terrible threat though. Like, I think depending on the matchup, this might be something that your opponent just can't deal with, because again, white will struggle to pick this off more than some of the other colors. Vision Herald is something that I do find myself thinking about. 2 and a colorless, 2/3 Vukarok Advisor. Next spell your opponent casts during their next turn costs an additional 1 mana and 1 life to cast. I have found myself thinking about Flicker, and one of the questions for me has been, how do we squeeze colorless mana in here for Vision Herald? Because I would love to tax my opponent out of spells. I don't think it gets there in a Flicker deck. I think specifically just because I think, as we will get to when we get to Errors in the Wift, I think the 3-drop slot in Flicker decks is going to be packed. There are some incredible candidates for Flicker decks. Thank you, H Squid. There are some incredible candidates at the 3-drop slot for Flicker decks, so I don't think Vision Herald quite gets to make an argument for itself to warp your mana base for it, but it is a fun card. Warp Figure is kind of just, it's the best removal colorless has. I don't think that's a great sign. It is 4 extra damage on something that does not die to the toughness reduction. You can push 4 extra damage, but I think at that point, why are you playing a pump spell in Pauper Eternal? Moving on to white, things are, I think, going to go a little bit faster. I have to give so much attention to colorless because there are other colorless supports in Eternal. Though again, I don't think Vast Doom necessarily has the reasons to be in colorless support. Like, we've got 3 colorless matters creatures. Yeah, we've got Timeless Custodian, a 4/4 for 4 with vigilance that can't have counters put on it. So it can't get -1/-1 counters. That's not nothing. Can't be stunned. And then we got a 6 mana 7/7 and a 3 mana 3/2 flyer that gives your opponent a scry, but it does let you scry as well. I don't think there's enough reason for Vast Doom to be in colorless exclusively or strictly. There are reasons to care about colorless, but I don't think Cyberos has drastically changed the conversation there. So Assembled Assault is pretty skippable. We just don't have a lot of artifact creature support, a lot of go wide artifact creature support. We do have a lot of token generation. Excited about a card in hybrid for Cyberos. Please call me out when you get there. I think I know exactly what you're talking about. I think Mesmage is going to be hot. If I'm wrong and you're not talking about Mesmage, I'm looking forward to what you are thinking about, but we will be getting to colorless, to multicolor eventually. And yeah, no, I think some of the Cyberos hybrids are sweet for Eternal, for Pauper Eternal. Conserve Ideals is skippable. We have something very similar that is in Cliques of Nylon that we'll get to, but it is 1 mana less. It's in green, so this being in white is not nothing. But I think we just, as much as it would be nice for this to be like something that you would want to turn to for your sideboard, and certainly, you know, I do think there are artifact and enchantment tokens to want to destroy, specifically subroutine tokens. Being able to destroy those and draw a card would be really nice. 3 mana is a lot to do so. Cut Aside, same problem. I think we just have better removal. Dark Ambassador is just, it's a hybrid colorless card. Could be a reason to care about colorless. I think it's just too expensive and too slow. Dated Mechanoid. I mentioned that, you know, artifact, go wide artifact stuff is a little awkward. This does not explicitly care about artifacts. It's just a 1/1 for 1 with first strike that buffs another one of your creatures when it becomes tapped, which means, you know, it's a reasonable white aggro card. We have not seen white weenies be much of a thing in Pauper Eternal. I don't recall anyone really giving it much room in the last tournament. I certainly think that we are getting some new toys for a mono white aggro creature deck, and Dated Mechanoid looks like it's probably going to be one of our best one drops in white. Um, but I will say, First Strike, as good as it is, one power First Strike makes it a lot more awkward in the face of Renegade Apprentice being a 2/2 First Striker a lot of the time. Galvanize is fine, not especially interesting. It is, a curious consideration for experience decks. 1 mana, put a +1/+1 counter on something, can potentially flip your experience creatures, and then giving them lifelink can be a nice way to swing. Good with traverse cards. Yes, it is. It is good with the traverse with the rifts. That is true. Although I don't think you want to run the rifts. I don't think you want to put creatures in the deck specifically to synergize with traverse. I think the value of a rift to me is how good is it on its face, how good is it on its enter trigger, and then if my creatures in my deck can get around to traversing it, is that something I care to do? And there are absolutely some cards. Hello, Pocket Sharks. Yeah, Rift and Aggro don't go well together. I do think there are like I've mentioned them a couple times. Onfen Channeler and Uxie Taskmage. I think they absolutely do love that we have some pretty good rifts available. Like the flyer one quite a lot in aggro. Anyways, this is also good in aggro. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so I think Galvanize could be something to try in experience. The lifelink makes me think that this would probably be more of a sideboard card, but being able to like flip your Togepi, have a 4/5, the second time it attacks, and then also have lifelink, so you're gaining 4 is not nothing. Holding Cell is just not what we're looking for in white removal. Lauded Orator is just not quite what we're looking for. Lithe Stalker is something I found myself looking at. I mentioned, we don't really have a lot of support for go wide artifact creature decks, but if we start getting more and more stuff like this, something I don't see doing a lot in this Pauper Eternal season, and feel free to prove me wrong, but I think this is something to keep an eye on. 2/2 for 2 that just gives your whole board First Strike whenever you play an artifact or make an artifact token is very, very notable. And if you have ways to make tokens, make artifact tokens or cast artifacts at instant speed, this just warps combat around it, which is very nice. Priestess of Chains. So this is the reason to really care about artifacts. We have a couple Cyber Soul creatures. I think the cheapest ones are the reasons to care. And I do not think this is an amazing one. It's a tapper. It's a 1/1 for 1 with Vigilance that taps a smaller creature. But if you Cyber Soul it for 3 and a white, tapping your artifact to reduce the cost, it flips into Winged Subjugator, which is gains 1 power, gains flying, and its tap ability can tap anything. I think it's just a little too fragile. It's our only 1-drop with Cyber Soul, so if you're going to care about Cyber Soul, you're probably going to try and find a way to make it work, and I don't think it's terrible by any means. I think it's just a little too fragile for the work that is required to get it really properly rolling. Though I do think it's a very good, sort of mid-rangey-esque card insofar as it is something that can apply pressure while restraining your opponent's ability to apply pressure. Yeah, the not getting toughness is really rough. Though also, I think a lot of our cheap removal would not care if this was a 2/2. But this being a 2/1 does still sting for sure. Retrofit Paladin. Yeah, this just can't block, which is rough. You put in a lot of work for something that you just never feel safe blocking with. Retrofit Paladin, enters, step up to 2 creatures with power 3 or less. Really not super important. Maybe if you're just desperate for flicker targets, you can flicker this on your opponent's turn to stall out the game a little bit, but I don't think that's where you want to be for flicker. There is Silver Silk Emissary, which is another colorless hybrid card. +1 counter on another advisor you control unless the opponent pays 2. This requires you to care about advisors, and I don't think we have enough good competitive advisors at common for this to matter. I don't think this would be something we would necessarily reach for, even if that were the case. Stellian Reverend is something that could potentially be like solid. It's a 3 mana 1/2, functionally a 2/3. You could just split one of its stats off onto something else. Though I think it's totally fine to put a counter on itself here, so it's just a 3 mana 2/3. And part of the reason why I think it's fine is you can Cyber Soul it for 4 and a white into Reborn Follower, a lifelinker that puts another +1/+1 counter on something when it transforms. So if you put a counter on itself with both of its enter and transform effects, this is a 4/5 lifelinker. That can do numbers for trying to help you stabilize against aggressive decks. And again, I think mono red is one of the things to be wary of going into this field. And a 4/5 is very good against mono red just in terms of like things that hold down the fort, on top of it being a 4/5 lifelinker. So I mentioned, like the appeal of Priestess of Chains being a cheap Cyber Soul creature, so it's cheap to get into play, and then if you have 3 artifact tokens, it's essentially like a 2 mana 2/1. This being functionally, if you can get 4 artifact tokens in play, a 2 mana 4/5 lifelinker, I think Reverend might be the reason to want to go wide artifacts. Yes, you can also split the stats off to other things. So if you're like desperate for 1 or 2 additional points of damage, you can play this out, Cyber Soul it, and have that be. Sorry, it's not a 2 mana 4/5. It's a 4 mana 4/5 if you can Cyber Soul it for just 1 mana. 4/5 lifelinker seems great. 8 mana is not, though. The green black 4/4 that gains 4 on enter did a lot of work. Yes. So the point that I'm trying to make is if you're not reducing the Cyber Soul cost by tapping artifacts, you're not playing this card. This is something you are reaching for when you are trying to do a like artifact tokens deck, where you're spitting out food tokens and glyphs and all of these trinket tokens and looking for ways to pay that off. This is one of the relevant payoffs, because this is a 3 mana 2/3 that you can run out and then flip for 1 mana on the subsequent turn, or you can just play it as 2 white 4/5 lifelinker. And again, you can split its stats off into something else. That's something you also have the option to do. Being able to like just put 2 counters on your Nordhaven Hawk is not a terrible approach. Nordhaven, no E? Yeah, no E. Nordhaven Hawk, being able to put 2 +1/+1 counters on this. Stone Turtle and Patisserie are common. They do enter the battlefield tapped, but we do, again, just have like cheap creatures that spit out trinket tokens. So again, like put 2 counters on this. Have a 3/3 flyer. It's not a terrible plan. And also, the Patisserie and Stone Circle don't necessarily enter the battlefield tapped. They only enter tapped if you need the token, if you want the token off of them. Sworn Loyalist is a 2 mana 2/1 first striker. I believe this is our last Cyber Soul card in white. It Cyber Souls for 4 and a white to flip into Silver Swift Spear, which is a 2/4 double striker. I think this is not as great as Stellian Reverend, but it could be another thing you turn to if you are trying to play this like token spam deck where you just want to have trinket tokens. Cyber Souling for the same cost does give you a very clear, like, you want 4 artifact tokens in play. Gives you a very clear thing to aim for. 2/1 first striker is a lot more relevant than a 1/1 first striker, like I mentioned earlier. Dated Mechanoid, very awkward in combat, staring down something like Renegade Apprentice. But 2/1 first striker does at least trade with Renegade Apprentice. You're going down in mana efficiency to block Renegade Apprentice, but Renegade Apprentice is just a thing you need to be able to deal with. And this can at least trade with it, which is not something that can be said for Dated Mechanoid. And if you can flip this, it is a very real clock even without buffing it up. And if you're playing it alongside Stellian Reverend, you will have ways to incidentally buff it up and have it hit harder. So I think the like trinket token package here, Sworn Loyalist, Stellian Reverend, might be something to experiment with. The trinket token payoff package, that is. Whipwing Dragonfly is kind of just a thing we can move past. Wistful Delegate. I think it is fine if we have enough things to care for advisors. I don't think we have enough things to care for advisors. I don't think you're reaching for Wistful Delegate. Moving on to blue, we have Aqueous Drake, which is, I think, something we can skip. Battery Drain is something I found myself thinking about a little bit, but kind of just moving past because this is something that kind of just preys on artifact creature decks, and I don't think we really have those in Pauper Eternal. I guess if the Sworn Loyalist and Stellian Reverend package takes off, maybe this does something funny because it stuns down both of those when they're flipped, but I don't think that's something you're rushing to play. Contain for Study is something that I've found myself thinking about. Obviously, Capture Field is not something you're crazy about, or Capture Sphere is something that you're not crazy playing. You don't necessarily want to play a, 3 and a blue tap a thing, it doesn't untap, but being able to gain control of it could be pretty nice depending on the function of the creature. This being Pauper, there are not a ton of creatures that are going to be generating constant value just for being on the board. A lot of the things that generate value do so on enter, which is why Flicker is so good, but just having them sit and play, not necessarily the most important. If you're trying to play a sacrifice deck, maybe this could be something to experiment with. And unfortunately, much to my chagrin, I believe we do still have some Flicker effects in the format that return the thing you exile to its owner's control. Tractor Beam a year or two in advance. Tractor Beam? Hold on. I don't think I'm familiar with Tractor Beam. Oh, wow. Tractor Beam with a more flexible casting cost. Can't hit spacecraft, but like a big whoop. And also at a lower rarity. How about that? Again, I don't think it'll be super important for Pauper, but it might be worth experimenting with. If we play a sacrifice deck, we are in black or red, which have better removal. That said, you get value off it. Yeah, exactly. And again, I think Mesmage is the thing you care about in those decks. We will get to Mesmage. But yeah. The fun thing is that Pauper Eternal last time around did not really have much in the way of looters, and then we got Cyberos and Cleekson Island back to back. We'll talk about Cleeks in a little bit, but Deep Charter Arcanist is one of our looters. I don't think there's enough incentive to play looters in Pauper Eternal like there has been in Standard, unfortunately. But we do have some Unearth effects, so it is something. Blue has better removal in a sacrifice deck. That Siren is crazy good. Yes, that is also very true. The Siren is very good. Yeah, we don't have as many incentives to play looters in Eternal, to my recollection. But certainly we have some Unearth effects. It is something that we could possibly do. We could do blue-black looters between this and Ignited Soul, because we have access to some Unearth effects to potentially pay this off. Mesmage doesn't hit the other hybrid common from CYB that I'm playing, so please, everyone, run 4 Mesmages. Oh, you are thinking about something other than Mesmage. Okay, I'm excited to see. Emulation Expert, 1 mana, 1/2. You can pay 2, tap, and sack it to gain control of a creature you don't control with mana value 3 or less. Its owner creates a tapped token that's a copy of it. Activate only as a sorcery. This is like a one-time theft that doesn't actually properly steal the thing. It just gives you your own instance of the thing that your opponent has. This is really awkward because, again, a lot of the value-oriented creatures in the format are ones that are doing so on enter, which means you're stealing something that's already gotten its value and giving your opponent more value to do so, or you're stealing something that's just stats on board and not dealing with the stats on your opponent's board. So it's essentially like you're leveling up the stats on this thing, which is not great. Elope is Elope could be fine with this. I think if you're running bounce spells for the sake of getting rid of the token this makes, I think you're in a little too deep, but I could see it being something to experiment with. Forced Ejection, though. This is a common. This sure is a common. 1 and a blue, bounce an on-land permanent, good old classic Disperse. Elope is just good for sure. I'm not going to dispute that because I'd be a fool to do so. But yeah, Forced Ejection, Disperse that cantrips if you've cast another instant or sorcery in the turn. This is like a genuinely good card. We will probably be seeing Forced Ejection out of at least some blue decks, not every necessarily, because we do have some like non creature. Well, we do have some non-instant sorcery spells to really care about in blue, but I do think Forced Ejection is very good. So is Industrialize. That we are getting some crazy good cantrips in this batch. Not necessarily a cantrip in this instance, just because it is card neutral. Or sorry, it's just pure card disadvantage, unlike cantrips. Cantrips are card neutral. This is card disadvantage. At least card disadvantage from hand. Force Ejection competing with the other push to disperse will with upside we got. Yeah, that is the one from Exalt's Twiltree, if I am understanding what you're referring to. We will get to that one. I do think that is also very good. I do think cantripping is maybe better, but I'm not going to sit here and say that the Twiltree one is bad by any measure. Erase from Existence, also very good. Yeah, Industrialize, I think, is something we will potentially see. Like, this is a card that's seen proper standard play. If you have a deck that cares about graveyards, this is going to be very good. Mage Hand, pretty skippable. Recharge, pretty skippable. Runaway Mech, pretty skippable. Siphon Energy, pretty skippable. Skyward Magus, I mean, it could be like a Spellslinger card. It could be like, this is functionally prowess-ish. Not too happy with outside of a deck that can loot or mill. Yeah, that's fair. Industrialize kind of requires you to have like very specific incentives. Again, like, I think if you're in a graveyard deck, you'll want Industrialize. It's not a cantrip on the same level as proper cantrips, but we have some other good cantrips we're getting, so it's not necessarily trying to compete for that spot. Anyways, it has a different function. Yeah, Skyward Magus, it's kind of a prowess card. Blue-red prowess sounds reasonable. This plus Renegade Apprentice seems like a good pair. Oh, for sure. Just like play the idiots that are annoying as hell to block between growing flyer and first striker that gets to hit you immediately. Absolutely. It's no joke. 2-mana flying prowess is what you want. Okay, cool. So nice to know that the theory behind this is sound. I wanted to be more on board with this, but I kind of psyched myself out with it, so it's nice to know that I'm a fool for psyching myself out. It just dies to Fashion Temples. Welcome to creatures with less than 3 toughness. That's my response to that. Yes, it dies to Fashion Temples from Flesh. So does most cheap things. Ranks Unmade. That, I think, is a little bit more of a stinger. Ranks Unmade killing this as well is a bit unfortunate. Especially because, like, if you cast a spell in response to the Ranks Unmade, they could just play around you, potentially trying to save your Skyward Magus by having this be the thing they put the -1/-1 counter on, and then you're screwed. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're on the same page there. Steam Veil model. I don't think it's great. If you have ways to keep spamming counters on this, Baffling Haze constantly could be annoying as hell, but I don't think it's all that important. Survey the Area, I want to have faith in. There is like a Spellslinger tokens deck, but I think it's one of the weaker tokens decks out there. Because we have the 1-mana 1/1, like, it's an instant or a sorcery from Bloodlike Rivers that makes a 1/1 flyer, and if you've cast an instant or sorcery in the turn, you make 2 instead. Steam Veil and Acclimating, switching between Sea Breeze and the green one. Steam Veil. You can't pick up enchantments, notably. So you can't, like, use Baffling Haze to reuse enchantments, unfortunately. So, like, you can't, like, bounce the green weather and then constantly spit out a bunch of 1/1s. Keep bouncing the opponent stuff. Yeah, that's fair. Conjure Forth. Thank you, Chipmunk. Let's get that pulled up just so we can have the visual. Conjure Forth. Yeah, this is, I think, a really good spell, but I think we just run the risk of people teching so much for go wide decks, like cheap weenie decks, red, aggro, all that, that I think Conjure Forth suffers. And by that same measure, I think Survey the Area suffers quite a lot. Keep bouncing the opponent, use Cycle Weathers. Oh, yeah, that's true, because you just play one weather, it sacks the other, and then you can acclimate it from the graveyard. That's true. Okay. I guess we're just using Sandstorm Dancer to acclimate. But then we're playing Sandstorm Dancer and we're playing like a Sultai Weathers deck. I don't know. Something to think about, I suppose. This is true of other discharge cards as well, though. What few we have. Anyways, black. Artificial Unlife. I don't think 3 mana -3/-3 is actually awful in Pauper Eternal. I just don't think this is the 3 mana -3/-3 effect we want. That goes courtesy of Kutalia. Game 3. Descend into Darkness. I think Descend into Darkness is what you want if you really want a 3 mana -3/-3 effect. 3 toughness is a very good breakpoint. Having ways to pop this off. Conjure Forth, High Voltage, Force Ejection can actually get awkward since you need to play something first. Yes, that is also true. I think High Voltage, Force Ejection is fine. I don't think you want Conjure Forth in addition to that. You can Conjure Forth and in response to it, high Voltage. That is also true. I think you want like High Voltage. I think you want Forced Ejection. I think Conjure Forth doesn't necessarily want to be in the same deck as those, is the awkward point for me. Yes, Descend into Darkness is, I think, where you want to be rather than Artificial Unlife. Though the 1/1 body is not awful. This could screw with combat math in a pretty meaningful way. Kill off one of their bigger attackers and then put something into play that trades off with a 1 toughness creature. 2-for-1 them. That's not something we're getting a ton of access to in Pauper, so a 2-for-1 is nothing to sneeze at. Again, I do think the life gain off Descend into Darkness is super nice, but again, I'm not gonna besmirch Artificial Unlife by any measure. Augmented Ruffians is fine. It's not a hill giant. What's the 4 mana 3/3 equivalent? Kill their biggest attacker. I love Pauper. Yeah, that's so true. 3 toughness, their biggest attacker is dead. I mean, listen, so many important things in this format have 3 toughness or less, and a lot of the important things have 2 toughness or less, which is why, like, I think Twilight Ambush is going to be pretty solid. And then the game becomes, what things do you play that don't die to Twilight Ambush? And they're things with 3 toughness. By that measure, Augmented Ruffians does eventually get out of range of -3/-3. I think there might be something to integrate aggro. We do have some solid integrate cards in black at common. I don't know if this is something that quite gets there, but it is silly that like this does just eventually keep escalating if your opponent doesn't check it. Unfortunately, the problem with all of these like toughness matters conversations is that white removal doesn't give a shit. White just exiles your thing temporarily unless you've got permanently unless you've got enchantment removal. So yeah. Augmented Ruffians, I think, could be a cute way to see like if scaling threats like this could work. Again, I do think we have other integrate effects that could be solid, so this could just, get escalated even faster. It's just a question of, is this something you want to be playing to pay off integrate? And I think Sanctum Repression is in fact not an uncommon. Yeah, we will get to Exalts of Twiltree. That card is in the format. Speaking of integrate payoffs, Beckoner of Ends. 3 mana 2/2 can be cast for colorless instead of a black. When it enters, target player discards a card and you integrate it. It has Death Touch as long as a land card is integrated onto it. Chittering Rats, this is not, but just things that do hit the opponent's hand and not your own are nice, because some of our cheaper opponent discards a card effects only like hit every player rather than just your opponent. And this being able to snipe something from your opponent's hand, deny any graveyard value that might come from it, and then also, potentially scale up, not Augmented Ruffians, but something else that might care about integrate, could be nice. And this potentially also just, hitting a land and then getting to be a Death Toucher, so it can cause some trouble for the opponent on board, is also appealing. Corpse Experiment. I have been a longtime fan of this card. I know it might be a bit unliked overall, but it is something I genuinely would have played in my Diabolical Minion deck last time around. Single black instant, you can return a creature from a graveyard to its owner's hand, or exile a creature card in a graveyard and draw a card. This is a card that really feels the nerf to Rivaling, because, oh boy, being able to either pick up my Rivaling, draw a card, or exile my Rivaling, draw 2 cards, depending. My goodness. Yeah, I think this is I think if graveyard decks are something you find yourself worrying about at all, this is something that is nice to reach for as incidental graveyard hate that does not require you to be as committed to it being graveyard hate as Soul Guide Lantern is. Yes, Soul Guide Lantern can cantrip. This does so for half the overall mana investment. Yes, Soul Guide Lantern hits the entire graveyard, but I think in Pauper especially, we have reasons to care about the full graveyard. We do have like Maven of Fear, like some of the Monsters of GQ stocked graveyard matters stuff. We do have Surface, so there's reasons to care about a full graveyard. But I think Corpse Experiment does check a lot of the graveyard synergies that exist in REV Pauper. And in that regard, having access to something like that can check these graveyard decks while being a real card outside of those matchups, while being, just 1 mana, pick something up from your graveyard, it's not nothing. I really do like Corpse Experiment. Missing non-creature like Coalesce is tough as graveyard. That is very fair. Yeah, not being able to hit Fashion Temples from Flesh is probably the biggest dinger for this card. Yeah, that is something that was not on my radar. But yes, this missing Fashion Temples from Flesh and other Coalesce spells is probably the death knell for it. As much as I want to have faith in it, and I do think this could still be doing some things. Missing Coalesce. Yes. Cybat is, I think, pretty skippable. Data Wipe. We've got both Data Wipe and we've also got the original version of Data Wipe Go Blank, both in this format now. So we went from not having any versions of this effect in Pauper to having 2 different versions of this effect in Pauper. So you can split. You can have 5 copies of this in your sideboard if you really want to for some reason. I don't know if we have as many reasons to care about this as we would in Constructed, but we did just talk about Fashion Temples from Flesh being really good and Coalesce spells being really good. So being able to strip those out of your graveyard, your opponent's graveyard, while impacting their hand is pretty nice. I forget if Go Blank is target player or if it's target opponent. Let me double check this. We'll get to Go Blank later, but it's target player as well. I don't think we have redirect effects at common, but something to be scared of at some point eventually in the future. Chronicle, but no other modes. Yeah, again, my issue with Chronicle was never the Go Blank mode. It was the fact that it was so flexible, that it was a Go Blank board wipe edict. And it was any of the 3, all 3 covering each other's weaknesses, that pissed me off. And yet also being a win condition later on in the game. I have said it to death. I know. I think anybody who gives me grief over it at this point is teasing me, but I still will, heighten my haunches, get, in a defensive stance. I will go to bat. That card's fucked up. Anyways, Dissolve into Data is an overcosted removal spell. Drake Street Inquisitor, unironically, probably one of the reasons to care about Integrate. It's you just integrate your opponent's deck every turn. It's a 1/3, so it blocks all these 2 power attackers, and doesn't die to Fashion Temples from Flesh. And you can eventually pop it to just ding your opponent for however many cards it's gotten to steal. And if you got multiple copies, they can all just escalate the same 1 Dreg Street Inquisitor. And because this is instant speed sacrifice, you can just respond to your opponent's removal by sacrificing it to still get the damage out of it. This does... I think this is a reason to care about Integrate. I don't know if it's going to get there necessarily, but if you're playing a slower deck, this is not a bad place to be in terms of trying to find win conditions. It's certainly a win condition that requires a lot less building around than something like On Defend Channeler and Ukshu Task Mage. Granted, the cards that those get to build around with are good, whereas other integrate effects might not necessarily qualify. But, I mean, Beckoner of Ends isn't bad. So, do we have the 2 mana Thoughtseize integrate? No, that's an uncommon. If we had that, I think I would be solidly on, integrate looks really good. But, unfortunately, it is uncommon. Flesh Bearer is another integrate card. It integrates things when it deals damage to creatures and has those creatures die. So pretty much just not an integrate card. It's a 6/4 with menace as long as it's integrated a creature card onto it. I don't think that matters. I don't think this is relevant. Iris Agent, our first Cyber Soul creature in black.
2 mana, 1/2 Death Toucher, Cyber Souls for 4 and a black. So there's that 4 generic cost on a Cyber Soul card again. However, I don't think it's as important as our white cards. I don't think Iris Flare is bad, though. Flips into a 3/4 Death Toucher, so it gets +2/+2, and when it transforms into it, target player draws a card and loses 1 life. Yes, this can push the last point of damage to your opponent if they're at 1, but this is also just like, if you've got the 4 artifacts, this is 1 black for a 3/4 Death Toucher that replaces itself. One of the more popular builds of Diabolical Minion was leaning on a lot of these kinds of, just replacing themselves creatures. Skiga Pillager was the big one. 2 mana, 2/1. If it attacks this turn, you draw a card and lose 1 life. And then we also had draw, lose, MV2. We also had Indentured Laborer. So we just had access to these effects, and the life loss from them was negated by Diabolical Minion. Now, not being able to negate the life loss from Iris Flare because you're not getting Diabolical Minion does sting. The Gargoyle, right? What Gargoyle? What? I'm trying to think of the Gargoyle. I know there's the... Oh, Marble Messenger. Maybe? Is that what you're referring to? 1/1 from that fetches a copy of itself. Nightmare. I don't think that's common? Yeah, no, it's an uncommon. Believe me, I love that card, but it is an uncommon. So yeah, no Gargoyle. But yeah, I think Iris Agent is solid. I don't know if we have as many reasons to want to be in black for Cyber Soul compared to white. I don't white has the 2 Cyber Soul cards that I think work really nicely together. Iris Agent I think is solid. If you were going into white black trinket tokens, Iris Agent I think is a very reasonable card to reach for. It blocks a lot worse than some of the others. Because First Strike is much better at killing it. Doesn't read bad. Front side seems too heavy for its backside to carry. Yeah, I think that's exactly where I'm at. I think if you can reliably transform it, then I'm more on board. But this Dying to Fashion Temples from Flesh and also Renegade Apprentice is a rough pairing of things that just kill it. But if you can flip it, 4 toughness is very nice. So I don't want to write Iris Agent off by any means. I do think it has a bigger hurdle to climb over than our white Cyber Soul cards do. Iris Cultist. So 3 mana, 3/3. When it enters, you lose 1 life. Same Cyber Soul cost. When it transforms into Reborn Apostle, it's a 5/5, and it has each player lose 1 life whenever it attacks. 4 toughness might as well be indestructible at this point. Yeah, against everything other than white decks, for sure. Red will start probably packing artifact removal, though, if this becomes a real problem for them. So Reborn Apostle is... It's a good body. It's a very good body. I am just super wary about something that is very taxing your life and something that consistently taxes your life in a field that feels so much like red is the deck to beat. Frag is a good shout too. Yeah, Frag ruins the day for a lot of these cards. Yeah, I think it's a bit rough for Iris Cultist. We have Machinations. We have a couple different Night's Whisper effects now, including proper Night's Whisper, that we did not have the last time around. I think a lot of them struggle to justify themselves over Night's Whisper, but Machinations in particular could actually get there. It's just a matter of how reliably can you have artifact creatures in play. Because I think if you are losing 3 life off of this, you are not necessarily happy about that. But if you have artifact creatures in play, 2 mana draw 2 with no downside is great. The downside truly is just needing to have enough artifact creatures in your deck for this to not hurt you. Dying Pledge and Machinations seems real, others not so much. Eternal Dying Pledge. Oh, how did I forget this? I played this last time around. Yeah, Dying Pledge is great. Dying Pledge is stellar. I mean, not necessarily the same category because this gets to exile cards from your graveyard, which is a non-cost. But like, we do also have Deadly Dispute to get to in the next set, so there are other payoffs, other incentives. But yes, I think Machinations looks great. It's just a deck building cost. The Amphibian is a French vanilla card. Moving on. Scrap Weight is something I think you will probably look to reach for in these Trinket token decks that I'm talking about. If you wind up in black for these Trinket token decks, Scrap Weight is a very real removal spell. Single black as an additional cost, sacrifice an artifact, pop a creature, and this just without needing to sack things, a second artifact gets rid of any one toughness creature is very nice. What you gathered from looking at commons available is removal is very efficient and premium, but threats look to be toned down a lot. Does that not boost control in this environment a lot? So yes and no. I think your assessment of threats are toned down, removal is very good, is very true. This was something that was true last time around, and I think is more true this time around because the removal has just gotten better and better. But like H Squid just said, aggro will murder you if you tech for control too hard. The best deck in the field last time around was mono red, and that was a field overrun by Diabolical Minion, where all of the black decks were gaining life with every single spell they cast. And mono red still won that tournament after like several Diabolical Minion matchups, including both of its quarterfinals and semifinals matchups being Diabolical Minion decks. So while we're in CYB, Vanguard Recruit is still a legal card to care about. Vanguard Recruit. I do not remember that one off the top of my head. Yes, we will get there. Please do not get ahead of me. We have so much to go through. This is going longer than I thought. We are still only on Cyberose. I'm very glad I decided to do it this way because I think it's reaffirming for me that if I was trying to do this in the scripted approach, I would be scripting this video through the entirety of the Pauper GP, and this video would be useless for everyone. Steelhorn Crusher just does not have the same appeal as Lithe Stalker. Giving your artifact creatures menace is nice, but just 5 mana 4/4, so I think that's flavor text. Withered Survivor is our, I believe, last Cyber Soul card. 4 mana 3/3 with menace. Cyberose does love its 4 mana 3/3s. Cyber Soul's for 3 and a black into Silver Eye Scout, which has super menace and +1/+1. I don't want to spend 5 mana for this. I don't, even over 2 turns, I don't want to spend 4 mana and then pay a black and tap 3 artifacts for this. I don't think it's that good. Moving on to red, Drone Swarm is desperate for us to have Thopter support that I think we just don't have. How many things in Pauper Eternal make Thopter tokens? 4, and they're almost all Cyberose. How many? Oh, no, sorry. Not 4, 3. And they are all Cyberose. How many things are typed Thopter? None. Yeah, no, this doesn't get there. This does not, in fact, get there. Anyways, Explosive Redemption is a 5 mana, is an overcosted removal spell. It's a very funny removal spell. If it kills a thing, you get it for a turn. But it's 5 mana. High Voltage, however, is gross. I have talked a bit about how good Mono Red was last time, and of the cards from the last top cut, of the decks from the last top cut, again, I mentioned 4 of the 6 top cut decks last time around were Diabolical Minion decks. Naturally, all of those decks lost to Diabolical Minion. The second place deck was an Esper Blink deck, I believe, like an Esper Bounce deck. That deck lost Redeploy, and a couple other pieces that have been changed, so that hurt all of them. That hurt that deck pretty hard. Mono Red has been unchanged. None of the red cards in that deck got hit at all, and we're getting upgrades for that deck, which is why I'm like, red is something you need to be ready for. This deck will murder you, and yeah, High Voltage Crazy played with it today. Yes, this is one of the best cost-reducing open fires we have in Revolution in general, and it It is in Pauper Eternal. So that's a thing you gotta be ready for. Iron Steambreaker is not a card we need to care about. Ironcliff Blaster, however, is something that I have been thinking about because it is not quite Renegade Apprentice. Not having haste on here is a real stinger, but being able to get the +1/+1 buff multiple times over the turn rather than just once is a big deal. The biggest note in favor of Renegade Apprentice besides the haste is that I believe Renegade Apprentice is just a like static ability. Just want to confirm this. Yeah, it's a static ability as long as you cast a non-creature spell. So first off, does not just specifically care about artifacts and enchantments. Instants and sorceries. Any artifacts or enchantments do also buff it. That's relevant specifically for enchantments. The mono red deck last time around was on Raislet Meditation. So Renegade Apprentice does have that going for it, but also the +1/+1, as long as you've cast a spell, does not need to have had that spell, like, this is not a trigger that you need to have resolve. Your opponent can't, like, respond to your spell, respond to the trigger by dealing 1 damage to the Renegade Apprentice. You can still, it will still be a 2/2. This, however, if you have, like, a 1 damage ping, can die with its trigger on the stack. It's a small note, but it is a relevant one. I think overall, Ironcliff Blaster is going to be something that, like, Prowess decks will turn to because it is a very damn good Prowess card. Raise the Alarm that draws the Lava Spike. Yeah, Raislet Meditation's so fucked up. It's so good. Raise the Alarm, drawing a Lava Spike is so damn silly. But yeah, I think Ironcliff Blaster is very good. Lead the Charge, I also think it might be solid. I've seen some people ruminate about potential heroic stuff, and I think this is a very real reason to try and not only care about heroic, but to try and squeeze some Solidarity adjacent support in. I don't think you necessarily need your heroic deck to care about Solidarity, but I think you do want to have a diversity of creature types amongst your threats, because if you can have 5 creature types on your board, this making something a flag bearer gets you to 6 types, and then gets to be a cantripping spell that triggers your heroic while buffing your stats. Like, I think that is a very, very nice suite of benefits for a deck like that. Unfortunately, I don't think it's anywhere near as applicable as Ironcliff Blaster or High Voltage, but I don't think it's nothing. Minoan Engineer is one of our 2 Solidarity effects. It's not it's definitely the worst of the 2 Solidarity effects. Yeah, the Charge is cool, but it's not Monstrous Rage. But yeah, +3 toughness is very relevant because it fights -3/-3 / High Voltage. Yeah, that is also very true. It is very nice in terms of what removal we have going on in the format at instant speed in particular. Minoan Engineer is the worst of the 2 Solidarity cards, but it is the one that replaces itself when it dies, which is nice. And it specifically replaces itself with something that's evasive, so something that benefits well off of the Solidarity tokens. And something that I think is just very relevant for Solidarity is that the Solidarity cards don't need to attack themselves, so you don't have to risk Minoan Engineer in combat if you have enough other types. Of the 2 in mono red, there's 1 in hybrid and 1 in green. There's 1 in hybrid. Oh yes, this is 1 of 2 in hybrid in mono red. There are 4 overall. My apologies. I always forget Solidarity is outside of red because the Solidarity deck in standard was just red. Muse is a spell we have other versions of. Pull the Wires. I don't think it's the artifact removal red will necessarily turn to, but it's not awful. It's not Smash to Smithereens. It's explicitly worse Smash to Smithereens. So yeah, I don't think we're going to be turning to it, but it is something. Resistant in the ranks is Threaten, so it doesn't really matter. We've just got better threatens, I think. Tried the red-green 2-drop in standard, but it was always mono-red, count to 6. Yeah, pretty much. Rev Drobo, I always want to have faith in. I think it's just kind of an unimportant card. Static Augment is interesting. We have so many Expedite variants in Rev. They're all commons, I believe. I don't think Pauper particularly cares that we have a bunch of Expedites, but we do have a bunch of Expedites. Pauper Solidarity can't count to 6. I'm not familiar with the depth of creature types we have available in Pauper, so I couldn't speak to Solidarity, but if you've spent some time trying to figure it out, yeah, that's unfortunate. Vagrant Sorceress, I think, is a meme. Vanguard Recruit. We're at Vanguard Recruit. This is the reason to give a shit about Solidarity. It's a 1-1 with Menace, which is, as we've seen in Standard, real. This is a pain in the ass to block, and a pain in the ass to block that gets to incidentally make Orcish Oriflamme tokens. That's cool. Though if Solidarity is something that is very difficult to get online, that will significantly hurt Vanguard Recruit overall. Aggressor model, you're in green, is something that I don't think matters. Endangered Psynock, similar problem. Impregnability is something that I have been thinking about because it is, if its condition is online, it's a better giant growth. Is that something we care about? I can't quite confidently say. Truly, I think if a lot of the stunt payoffs from Viridian's last mission were at common instead of uncommon, then that combined with heroic support, I think I would be much higher on this card. But because the stunt stuff from Viridian's last mission, most of the payoffs center around uncommon, I can't be super keen on it. Londell Sharpshot is that Solidarity card in green. This one's fine. Can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, so can't be blocked by things that just chump it, and can't be blocked by things can't be blocked by things that like perfectly kill it. It has to be blocked by things bigger than it, which is pretty real. You maybe have exactly enough for the Dream. You have the hybrid that gets counters from KDT, and the Berserker from Twy, but I don't think we have too much haste, and there's a lot of cheap removal. Sharpshot being a human kills it. Moving on. Okay, cool. I think this is not an awful text box. Unfortunately, it is an awful type line. Massive Predation. Moving on. Orbinoid is not the funny card it used to be. Moving on. Ozon Woodmark is real. This is a mana dork that does not require itself to tap, and so thus can generate you mana while also applying pressure. It's a very solid mid-range card. We've seen it do work in Standard. We saw it do work in Standard, rather. Pay your respects. This thing rotated without much fanfare, but this was a very real card. And I think it could be a very real card in Eternal. And from what I've seen, it has already gotten to be a bit of a very real card, which is cool. I'm a big fan of Ozon Woodmark. I'm happy to see it thriving after it rotated here. Rigorous Recon is the Lay of the Land with the Scry 1 attached. Why are you playing a Lay on the Lay of the Land? Ozonwood was good in the hands of Kumrock? Yes. It was in Kumrock's black-green mid-range decks, and those decks shorted kick-ass. So, yeah. Ozon Woodmark is very real. Why are you playing a Lay of the Land? Hey, we have 2 green Solidarity creatures. We have Scrapmail Conscript, a 5-mana 4/4. You're saying we don't have hasty threats, Age Squid? Look, this thing has haste in its text box. This is so bad. So bad. You're not playing this at 5 mana. It's got relevant types, I think, in that I don't think it overlaps with anything. Haste and 4 toughness. This thing is unkillable. It's the best stompy threat we have. That's a bad sign. Somebody get provocative. Stompy's back on the menu. Warrior is tough. That's fair. Warrior is pretty rough. Billion Lay of the Lands, but Apiarist is uncommon. Oh no! Don't tell me you want to play 4-land Spy. Don't do that to me. Yeah, Ozon Woodwork is here to ramp out the one good 4 in the format and then block. Yep. I mean, hey, that 4 is pretty good, and I think there might be other 4s that are debatably in contention. They're not as good as the 4 that you're referring to, but it's 4 drops do exist. They're just not amazing. Simpler Times is sideboard fodder, and I don't think it's great at that. Sky Snipe is, I think, a little bit better at being sideboard fodder. More like 6-7 land Spy you don't want to deck out. That's true. Sky Snipe is if there are flyers you care about, this makes sure that they aren't there anymore. And also, it's like a combat trick. Realistically, We will get to it. Elwinor's Mark is better. We've gotten a better version of this. It deals 1 less damage, but it's 1 less mana. I think Elwinor's Mark is the thing you will play, but this is not awful. Stand Strong. 4 mana, make 2 1/1s. Then if there are 6 different types among creatures you control, put a +1/+1 counter on each of those tokens, which is either 2 1/1 elves or 2 2/2 elves, and then you draw a card. I don't think this is a great payoff for the Solidarity thing. 4 mana is a lot. Hey, we have other 4-drops. I just had the thought. Anyways, Tesla Hammer Giant is a 6 mana 6/6 that can strip off one of its counters to strip its counter off to give something +4/+4 until end of turn. Moving on. Valiant Resistance is debatably worth trying an experience. 3 mana, distribute 3 counters among up to 3 creatures is not terrible. Cyros does love its 4 mana, make 2 tokens, huh? Yeah, I guess so. Why is Vasilisa, like... I'm not sure why she's nervous here. I don't know Cyros' story. But yeah, I think this could be worth trying an experience. 3 mana is not amazing for experience. You definitely want your +1/+1 counter granting effects to be cheap. So you can play more of them in a turn and get your experience creatures flipped faster. But I'm not going to sit here and say this is terrible for that deck, because this is something that you can play and then just immediately beat face with multiple experience creatures that can help flip all of them. Like, hypothetical curve. Hypothetical curve. Why did that just close my tab? I did not mean to close that tab. Let's... Eternal, rarity common, experience. So, turn 1, Eager Hatchling. Turn 2, swing with the Eager Hatchling, get a +1/+1 counter on it, play Winding Snake. Turn 3, Valiant Resistance, 1 counter on Eager Hatchling, 2 counters on Winding Snake. Swing with both, they both get their 3rd counter, and then you have a 4/5 flyer, plus a 4/4 on the ground that will keep getting more counters. It's not terrible. And if you just already have Eager Hatchling transformed into Realized Hatchling, that is just making this thing a 7/8. So again, like, I think the 3 mana does sting, but it's not bad. I think it could be a very, very appealing card for green-white experience. And I think experience already wants to be green-white because a lot of the best +1/+1 counter generating effects are in green. So Winding Snake into Valiant Resistance doesn't seem too bad on its own. Yeah, that's also true. Like, this just, like, flip it into a 4/4 that immediately gets its 5th counter, and you're swinging with a 2 mana 5/5. Like, that's fine. Invest 5 mana over 2 turns and you're getting a 5/5 attacking. Absolutely. So yeah, I think there's absolutely something to this. I think there's something to trying this in experience. I think experience does suffer for how good the removal is more than most aggro decks, because it's an aggro deck that is so all in on buffing up its creatures. But I think that is a small price to pay to get some of our best cheap beaters in the format. We're on to the hybrid cards, and we'll have to see if I can figure out what hybrid H-Squid is talking about, because I thought it was Mesmage, and it's not Mesmage. Barded Brachian, 4 mana 3/3 dinosaur beast with trample and solidarity. I'm assuming this is not the hybrid that H-Squid is talking about. Moving forward to Brandish Garrett Greatness. It's a bad removal spell. Moving forward, Brass Laborer. I don't think we have artifacts we look to care to untap. We're moving forward. Escorted Captain. I think it's interesting if an Aristocrat style deck can come together. I don't think one can, but it is interesting. Flametip Goliath, not great. Mesmage. Okay, wait. It's Brass Laborer? What? Oh, god damn it. Yeah, Monument to the 30. Okay, yeah, Brass Laborer. What do you mean Mesmage can't steal the thing I'm talking about? It is a creature. H-Squid. You psyched me out because you were talking about, like, Mesmage can't take it. And I'm like, what do you mean Mesmage can't take it? It explicitly can. It is a creature. I can't steal the monuments. Yeah, I don't care. I'll steal the thing that's untapping the monuments. This activates as a sorcery. Anyways, yeah, Monument to the 30. I mentioned we have some big mana decks in the format. Let's talk about Monument real quick. Monument to the 30. I mentioned the big mana decks are kind of skewing towards combo decks because Monument to the 30 plays Breaching Jaxal to untap itself repeatedly. Defenders plays Silversong Battlements, which runs any of a variety of different ways to untap it to generate a bunch of mana. Like I think both the big mana decks are great. You can't steal it while it's relevant. Okay. I'll steal the big thing the big creature you put into play. And if you're looking to put something other than that's scary to play, I'll play blue black sacrifice and I'll just counter the big spell you're casting. I do think blue black sacrifice is very real because of Mesmage being something you can play in blue. Because it enters tapped, you end up having untapped monuments when you play other monuments. So as soon as you get mana positive, you can crack all counters from Laborer to be mana positive. Okay, yeah, that's fair. I'm not going to sit here and say Brass Laborer is bad. Specifically with Monument, I think Monument is something that really wants support like that, and Brass Laborer is absolutely something that does that support. The charge counter placement is being useless is a little unfortunate, but that's small potatoes, I think, ultimately. Anyways, yeah. Let's talk about Mesmage. This card's fucked up. It does die to Stiff Breeze. That is a very real consequence of this being such a good card. But this is one of the few cards that I think matters for being in play to reach counters, which is oddly relevant. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, this dies to a Stiff Breeze, which is the price you pay for having something that is so relevant on board. If you are playing a sacrifice deck, this will take over the board. This will change how the game functions. Your sacrifice outlets, all of your sacrifice synergies are not as important for your opponent to deal with as this dinky little 2-mana 1/2, because it taps a creature and gains control of it until end of turn, and it can be in either blue or red, which means you can play blue-black sacrifice, you can play red-black sacrifice, you can play blue-red sacrifice. Somehow, if you find creatures, like ways to sacrifice creatures in mono-red, not really a thing. I think you play like blue-black or red-black, but I do think both of them can work. This plus Scion's Fort is disgusting. Absolutely, we will get to Scions, but I'll show it right now for the sake of conversation. Yeah. Steal something, swing with a 4/3. You've stolen your opponent's best blocker and killed it permanently. Scions is also hybrid. Yes, that's true. Unlike the rest of the sacrifice deck, it doesn't die to slightly less Stiff Breeze of Crimson Finale. Yes, that is also very true. Things that don't die to 1 toughness sweepers, very nice in a sacrifice deck, and Mesmage sure does not die to a 1 toughness sweeper, which is nice. Very nice. Definitely, I think this card would be worse as a 2/1. Which is not something I am always saying about these kinds of creatures. But yeah, so I think the sacrifice deck, I think, will hinge on Mesmage in some capacity. It's not necessarily a card you'd want a full playset of in the main. I think maybe a split in the full 75 is where you want to land, but I do think you want a full playset in the full 75. I think the place I land on it is I think you want 2 copies in main, 2 copies in sideboard, because it's a card that you are very happy to have, but there are matchups where it's useless. So being able to have 2 in the sideboard so you can board them in games 2 and 3 when it matters is very nice, while still having it in the deck for that first game in case it matters. Creature that never gets into a fight, does not care about +1 power. Yeah, it doesn't care. What a shocker. Yeah, I think Mesmage is sick. I think it's quite honestly one of the most important Cyberus cards for Revolution Pauper. It's not the most important because High Voltage is right there, but I think it's one of the most important. Neotech Skyguard does not get to say the same thing. It's bad. Workshop Helper. I don't think this is an experience card, and I don't think there are other decks that care about +1/+1 counters. 88 minutes, nearly done with set 1. Looking forward to 800-minute stream. Yeah, we're going to have to move a little faster, I think, through future sets. To be fair, I had to burn a lot of time both on the intro and also talking about the colorless cards in Cyberus, despite thinking they don't quite get there, just because I felt like I was obligated to give colorless cards a bit of time because they're something we don't have a ton of. Join the curation team as Cyberus got added in, and Mesmage is a card I flagged for Constructed. Obviously, you got proven wrong, but yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I don't think it's something that looks like it would have like a ton of standard relevance just because it is sluggish in its application. But I think Pauper is a format where that sluggishness is not too slow. It is still a 2-drop. It is still something that comes down early, and I think Pauper is a format where it taking over the board could be very real. So we'll see. Again, I don't think we have +1 counter decks outside of experience that care for something like this. And I don't think experience cares about this. So I would love to be wrong about Workshop Holper. I do like this card. Moving a -1/-1 counter from one of your creatures onto an opposing creature is very funny. And there are some -1/-1 counter cards in blue that I think could be interesting in Solitaire, so maybe. Autosifter is not relevant. Hollow Map is not really relevant. Omnoid Destroyer is another colorless matters card. Gives your artifact creatures death touch. I don't think that especially matters. Plasma Armory is one of those trinket token cards that I think quite matters. It is a trinket token generator that replaces itself with another trinket token. Weapon tokens are not negligible as far as trinket tokens go, especially when we're talking about how critical these low toughness breakpoints are. Weapon tokens can be very, very nice in that context. And this replaces itself in terms of drawing you a card as well. This could be 3 mana, make two weapon tokens, draw a card. And the fact that that can be broken up over multiple turns, also very nice. I don't know if you want to be playing a ton of artifact token generators that aren't also bodies on board. I think like your trinket token generators, I would much sooner reach for a playset of Nordhaven Hawk before I slot in the first copy of Plasma Armory. But I do think I would slot some copies of Plasma Armory into one of those trinket token decks for sure. Reactor Sphere is a bad... It's a Manalith. It's not a great Manalith. Seeker Orbs is bad. Supercharger, there is one application for this. We will put a pin in Supercharger. Being a 0-cost spell is vaguely relevant. And I guess this could also theoretically be an experience card. I don't think it could ever be a good one. But 0-cost spell could potentially be relevant. We will put a pin in it. 0-cost spell freely. Yeah, I think this could potentially be relevant. We'll put a pin on it. We will come back to this for Exalted Twiltry. And for those of you who know exactly why we're coming back to it for Twiltry specifically, yeah, it's for exactly what you might suspect. Capital Zenith is a bad fixing land, in my opinion. Because you just... having to pay 2 for this sucks. Being able to get mana out of it immediately would be nice. If we had reasons to care about lands ending up in the graveyard, I would be a little higher on Capital Zenith, in all honesty, but I don't think Pauper really cares. I think the Ancient stuff we have is not enough of a reason to want this in your graveyard. And Ancient in particular doesn't care about things ending up in your graveyard, because this does not change your Ancient count if this is in play or in graveyard. So, unfortunate. I think these tapped duels that you can discard and scry to are vaguely interesting, specifically Dark Horizon and Lunar Plateau, if... not Lunar Plateau. Dark Horizon and Nebulous Ring, if colorless ends up matter. Ancient cares about lands on the field. Yeah, exactly. I think Nebulous Ring, Dark Horizon, if colorless ends up mattering, could be decently appealing, but they are still tapped duels, which is awkward. The other duels don't matter. Warpray Rings is the last one. It's another 0-mana artifact. It's your land drop. It's our worst Evolving Wilds. That's not actually Evolving Wilds. It's like second from the bottom in the tier list of our basic fetches in the format because it's better than Evolving Wilds and that it works with artifact synergies, but I don't think that's enough of a reason. The most positive thing I can say for this is that if you were to run a copy of it in your Cybersoul Trinket Tokens deck, you can tap this to pay a Cybersoul cost, as if it was generating 1 mana. That does mean that you're getting your basic lands tapped a turn down the road, which sucks. Don't think we really have many relevant artifact fall triggers by any means. Not off the top of my head anyways. Maybe I'm misremembering there's something in a set we haven't covered yet that is the case, but Warpray Rings, no such acclaim. I think it's only slightly better than Evolving Wilds because of the potential for synergy. That is Cyberos. Let's get up to the top here, and we're just gonna roll right into Clixon Island. We gotta get moving. That needs a space. We don't have relevant Concord at common either. Yeah, that would be one of the reasons to care. But don't think that is something that is super relevant. Starting with Border Junction, I don't think Defenders really is in white in Pauper, and I don't think this is a defender that you would want to play in Defenders. It's a 1 mana 0 tough, 1 mana 4 toughness. It does block most things, but I don't think this is where you want to be in Defenders. Brazen Black Coats, I think, is just not quite there. I think Approval is going to be really... Like, Approval is already something that's proven to be very difficult in Constructed. I think Approval is not going to be made any easier in Pauper Eternal. I know it bums Stasis out that I am an Approval change naysayer. I understand why Stasis made the change, and I think especially once Lorwyn Eclipsed was released, the fact that Stasis had already retroactively made Approval stand out compared to Vivid is nice. I get the design decisions behind it, but I do think the cards suffer as a result. And I don't think even in the old version of Approval that Brazen Blackcoats could have gotten there. Change Allegiances, maybe, because what this reads to me is choose to either rebuy your Oblivion Ring, your Banishing Light effect, or destroy your opponent's Banishing Light effect. So maybe. I think it's not the best disenchant we have access to in white, but it's a disenchant effect that could also rebuy your own removal, which is nice. Codename Cicada is something that I have been thinking about. Like 1 mana 1/1 flyer is fine. The surveillability, like I don't know what white blue decks want to be surveilling in Pauper specifically. In outside of Pauper, I think Codename Cicada does look a lot better. But even then, like it got some experimentation, some play in Constructed, but it was never like the linchpin of its deck. I could see it getting some use though. Like it having access to this ability in board stalls is nice. And 1/1 flyers are also nice. Eager Voter. So this is when we need to talk about Pledge. Long story short is where I land on cliques is roughly where I land on in them in normal constructed. Going through them off the top of my head. Only I play it as a way to activate shoals. I do recall it being played in white-blue tempo in Cliques of Nyland season, if memory serves. Yeah, and that was when the activated ability cost was white instead of colorless. But I recall it seeing play in CNY season. Yeah, there's some like not incredible leagues. Yeah, Nabi was playing it. I don't think it did amazing stuff for Nabi. Again, I remember it seeing some play in Nyland season. It looks like it was not the most successful deck. It was Builder Scam. Builder Monuments, Sleeper Strix, Spellbane Sentinel, Codename Cicada, Melon, Selected Truth Seeker. What were we scamming into play? Oh, this is what we were scamming. We were getting Voyage to the Siren Sea into bin as just Ancestral Recalls. And we were playing Security Initiative / Surveillance State as like instant speed Builder Monuments, tap something down and draw a card, and then you could flip this and just ruin your opponent's day. Yeah. Did not thrive by any measure, but it was a deck that had some function to it. For sure. Anyways, yeah, I don't think Cicada is amazing, but it's not bad by any means. So anyways, Eager Voter. I don't think we have an easy way to check the cliques on LackeyBot. Is there a functionality to do so? It does not look like we can. Type token. Can we do that? Nope. So we're going to have to go off of my memory and what I can say verbally. And thankfully, I do remember what it is. If I recall correctly, it is Esper. White, blue, and black can get you a clique that lets you surveil 2. Dollarshine cliques on Discord. Pull up a screenshot. OBS... I don't want to mess with OBS a little. I have an idea. Let's escape from limbo. Does Escape from Limbo have the cliques? Yes. Escape from Limbo does have the cliques. Here we are. Serial Bureau. White, blue, and black get Surveil 2. Blue, black, and red get Hazak Arsenal, which makes a 2/2 minion creature token with Decayed. Black, red, green gets Vishanki Incorporated, makes a treasure. Red, green, white gets Penwrath Insurgency, +2/+2 to a creature. Silman Labs, green, white, and blue, tap an untapped creature. You may put a +1/+1 counter on it. You can activate these abilities as a sorcery, but if you are making a pledge, you get to activate these abilities for free. If you do not have one of these in play, you make one by your pledging makes one instead of getting the ability. So the first time you pledge, you just get the enchantment token in play. Subsequent pledges get you the value inherent therein. I think our best pledge effects are going to be ones that pledge repeatedly. Otherwise, I think the creatures that pledge on enter. Only deck I'm okay with pledge is as a win con for Monument to the 30, because you can pledge like 5 to 6 times a turn, but only with the lands, not with the non-lands. Yeah, I think the pledge lands are very relevant. I think they're very nice mana outlets, and they give us a very nice way to spend a lot of mana outside of turning to the Evil Plan lands from Viridian's Last Mission. I do think there is something to non-land cards with pledge, but I think the creatures that do so on enter really have to lean on flicker effects to get the most value out of them. And unfortunately, they're all at 3 mana, which is exactly where our most relevant 3 drops are in terms of flicker value, which are the 2 big ones from Errors in the Weft that make subroutine tokens, and I think making a subroutine token repeatedly might be better than just pledging repeatedly. I am a sucker for Vishanki Incorporated in particular. Making treasure tokens repeatedly is something I am known to be fond of. I don't think Eager Voter is all that great in that regard, that it can't pick Vishanki Incorporated. It also can't pick what is statistically the best clique to my knowledge, which I believe is Hazak Arsenal, the 2/2s with Decayed, is my understanding, as like the actual functionally best clique is just not something you have access to. You do have access to another one of the very good cliques, though, which is Silman Labs. The fact that this can tap opposing creatures is very real. The fact that you can use this to scale the stats on your own creatures is very nice. This, if you pledge Penwrath Insurgency, this being able to be a 4/5 lifelinker on attacks is nice. I just don't know if it quite gets there in that regard. But it is something I think is worth considering, worth trying. I think the flickering of these is just a bit too mediocre compared to the value you can get by flickering the subroutine makers that we will get to in Errors in the Weft. Enforcers of Baton is a limited card. Held in Contempt is, I think, a limited card. Magnetic Rhetorician is one of those repeat pledgers. 5 mana, 3/5, make a pledge. On attack, I think it's a little too slow. I wish I could be more confident in this, but it is just a little too slow. It is kind of where I want to be with pledging, though. I want repeat pledge, or I want multiple pledges out of my non-land cards. Medic's Implant is, I think, a limited combat trick, not quite something that wants to be in constructed play. Penwrath Rope Runner is just a bit too expensive to be super relevant. Replicated Regiment is just not quite where I think you want to be either. Retaliatory Outburst is something that I have been thinking about, just because removal that gains you a bunch of life is very nice. I think this outperforms Descend into Darkness. Obviously different color, but still. I think if you have creatures with lifelink, this being able to gain you 4 life is very, very nice. 3 mana for this effect is a lot. But I think creatures with lifelink are a lot more prevalent than the other, combat removal spell that gains you life is looking for, because that is also conditional. We'll get to Valir, but Valir has something very similar that costs 1 less mana, but requires you to have a Warlock. I think Warlocks are a lot less prevalent than creatures with lifelink, but I don't know if this is necessarily something you're going to be reaching for. Best pledge colors are blue for Hazak and 2 situational, and red similar in my opinion. Yeah, I think the Hazak, the colors that have access to Hazak are just the best in my opinion. because you get Hazak and you get access to two other pretty solid ones. Because like even the black one, like the argument of blue and red both get two very solid situational ones. Black by that same measure also gets two very solid situational ones between banking treasures, banking mana, and surveilling to fixing your draws. Neither of those are as amazing as Hazak Arsenal, but those are both solidly situational. And if the argument then comes that those are not as good as the ones that blue and red have access to, both blue and red have access to one of those two. So I do think blue and red's options for the situational ones are a little bit better because red's alternative to Surveil 2 is +2/+2 to something, and blue's alternative to making treasures is tapping something down. Certainly, I do think blue and red are the best in that regard. I agree. I think black is very close behind. Anyways, Retaliatory Outburst, I think, is solid, but a bit sketchy. Rogue Justiciar is a heroic card. I don't think it's a great heroic card, unfortunately. I think it's just a little too expensive, and I think the payout is not where you want to be. If you have abilities that can target it repeatedly, that might be a little more worthwhile, but I don't think that's quite where we want to be in Rev Pauper. Seasoned Spymaster, I think the Enter and Teach effects are cute, but not quite Eternal playable. Not quite Pauper Eternal playable. Abduct is, I think, a pretty solid but bog standard limited effect. Bring to the Limelight is solid. It is a cantrip that can buy you some real-time, meaningfully change combat math, potentially change combat math in your favor so your creature, like blocking something your opponent's sending in, goes from trading to just killing. Especially when we are looking at things like Renegade Apprentice and Ironcliff Blaster, which are such a pain to block. Being able to just negate their first strike by way of dropping them to 0 power is something that is very powerful. We're seeing, like, we saw this in Ricky's GP winning deck this past month. This is in the Terrors deck in Standard right now. And I think it's not one of the best cantrips in the deck, but I do think this is a very real cantrip. It is a cantrip that is something worth reaching for. We have berries for easy ability heroic. I think, yes, we do have berries for easy ability heroic, but those are things that do not stick around permanently, so you only get so much heroic value out of them. The moment that the thing on them is dealt damage or deals damage, the berry goes away and you don't have access to it anymore. And I don't think we have ample enough berry generation to necessarily enable that. Hypothetically, ideally, I wish that were the case, but Civic Copterist, I talked about Teach Enter Trigger cards not being super great for Pauper Eternal. Codename Bumblebee, I wish I was more confident on. I do like this card. I just don't think that's where we want to be. Combat Corporal is one of the reasons I think blue-black sacrifice could be a real thing, because it's a blue sacrifice outlet. It's also got 1 toughness, so that kind of stinks, but it's a blue sacrifice outlet, and how many of those do we get? And it's also something that lets your creatures that might care about things dying and maybe getting bigger as things die get in without being blocked, which could be nice. I don't know. I think this could be cute. I think this could be a solid place to explore for blue-black sacrifice. No promises that it's going to be good, but I think it could be worth trying. Dampening Reconciliator. Again, I think approval is just a little too awkward in Pauper Eternal. Election Fraud is one that is absolutely on my radar. It's another thing that might be worth trying in SAC. Because this gets access to Hazak Arsenal, which is a very good clique for the sacrifice deck, spitting out a bunch of 2/2s that are going to die anyways. And then drawing a card, getting Hazak Arsenal set up, and making a 2/2 Decayed is very nice. Subsequent copies, just making a pair of 2/2s with Decayed and drawing a card is very nice. This being at instant speed is very nice. It being at instant speed also is very nice if you go for Silliman Labs, because that lets you tap your opponent's creatures at instant speed. I think this is just a great cantrip. It is something I think could see play in sacrifice decks for Hazak Arsenal. I could see it seeing play in control decks for Silliman Labs, because it is a way to tap your opponent's creatures at instant speed and replace itself. And because the flexibility on Pledge, you can go for Hazak Arsenal if the control deck needs this to be a win condition rather than a survival tool. It's something that gets to be playing multiple roles in the main, which is nice. I don't think Evasive Tactics gets there necessarily. I think, have too many good hexproof tricks that I think this gets to be pushed to the side a bit. Though Teaching Vigilance is nice. Expendable Researcher is a reason to care about the graveyard. I don't think this is necessarily a sack card by any means, but maybe it's a looter's card. Not a great one by any means. 3 mana to exile it from your graveyard is expensive, but rebuying an instant or sorcery could be really nice. Informed Voter falls into the same trap as the other Pledge on Enters cards, I think. Invader of Privacy, the Surveil on Draw card is a very nice enter trigger. I think it just is something you'd want to play in a Flicker deck, and again, I think we have a better 3 mana blue creature that gets you card advantage on enter. So unfortunately, I think this doesn't quite get there. Political Prisoner is awkward for approval reasons. Rush for Results is not super great for Pauper Eternal, I think. Stasis Chamber, I think, could be very nice. It's a 1 mana thing doesn't untap. It's 1 mana Claustrophobia if you have a creature with Vigilance. I don't think the Vigilance thing will come up super often in Pauper Eternal, but I think it's just 1 mana thing doesn't untap is very good. Blue Collar Bloodsucker is, I think, not quite where we want to be. I don't think Bureau Broodmother is not quite where we want to be in Pauper Eternal. Same with Climactic Drop. Codename Ant, I think, is just a little too silly, more than powerful in Pauper Eternal. Covert Infiltrator. It's great if you have reasons to mill this over and then put it into your hand, reasons to care. There's a card I really wanted to figure out how to break, but I just never quite can figure out. But certainly it has a very unique niche in that if you mill it over or surveil it over, you can get it back to your hand. If you have a blue permanent, it doesn't really cost life to do so at all, which is nice. Deadly Dispute needs no introduction. Banned in official standard, in official Pauper. REV Pauper has access to it unbanned. If you're doing trinket token stuff or sacrifice stuff, this is a card you will invariably reach for because it's good. We know it's good. Estranged Aristocrat is one of the better sacrifice outlets in our format. It is 3 toughness, so it does not die to Fashion Temples from Flesh. It is 3 toughness, so it does not die to any of our cheap sweepers. It's a solid sack outlet. The life cost is awkward, but I mentioned pledging to Hazak Arsenal is very good for sacrifice decks because it is a way to make trinket tokens, and so this allows you to creature tokens that just die for your aristocrats effects. So being able to sacrifice one of your creatures and get a new creature out of it, plus whatever value you get for sacrificing that creature, is really nice. Being able to do this instant speed is really nice because you can do this in response to removal. You can sacrifice it in response to removal that would kill it. This is, I think, one of our better sack outlets overall. Very nice to pair this with Mesmage, I think. Expendable Medic is, I think, better than Expendable Researcher. Single black 2/2, exile it from your graveyard to return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. 2 mana for that effect from grave is very nice. I think if you're doing a Graveyard Matters deck, like a self-mill deck, I think this is something you try out. Potentially also a sacrifice tool, because it's got 2 toughness, because it doesn't die to those cheap sweepers. This is something that could be tried in sacrifice as a more reliable thing to sacrifice early on that gets you value later. I'm a little more dubious of it there. Hazak Conscriptor is cool, but I don't think it quite gets there. Lofty Voter is a little awkward for the same reason as the other Make a Pledge on Enter cards. Night Squad is awkward for the same reason I think so of the other Enters and Teach cards. Presidential Pardon being when a creature dies, you get it back as a flyer is nice. I just don't think we have enough ways to scam this. We don't really have any evoke-like effects to scam this with, and that would be the reason to keep an eye on something like this first and foremost. So that's a bit unfortunate. But I do like this card. Rigged Trial bridges us into a conversation that needs to be had about mana value 4 or greater matters. We do have some cheap creatures that get bigger as you play MV4 plus spells. And Rigged Trial is classically one of those spells that you play with those kinds of effect. Now, granted, we do not have the reason that this saw constructed play around right now, which is that this does not get to be played alongside our 4-mana 4/4 Sphinx Bard. That sure is a rare. But I think we will get to the mana value 4 plus matters cards. I don't think Rigged Trial quite gets there in Pauper Eternal, but I do think it is something worth remembering that it exists. I think it is one of the reasons to care about approval if you find yourself ever caring about approval. Did someone call me? Yes. Hey. It's our local. Oh God, can I remember card off the top of my head? JJ Mac. JJ Mac. Verdict says JJ Mac. I remembered correctly. Look at that. Anyways, yeah, Rigged Trial. If we care about approval, that might be a reason to care. Senator Chauffeur is just too expensive. The when it dies, exile it clause bums me out. I want to do bullshit loops with this. It's out of range of it looping itself with its own ability. Let me be bullshit with it. I understand why it exiles. It's a common. It can't be that bullshit, but I'm still sad. I'm sad that Stasis is a responsible designer. Boo-hoo. Boo-hoo. This person's good at designing this game and doesn't just inherently make a single card stupid with itself. I'm sad. Ardent Voter, awkward for the same reason as the others. Battlefield Tactician, I have thought about a bit. I don't think it's as good of a sack outlet as other options, but it is a red sack outlet, which is nice. I just think it's ultimately a little awkward overall. This can scale itself or any of your other creatures, which is nice. And Menace is a real headache. But I think overall it's not quite there. Capital Maglev, I think is just too expensive. I always look at this and want to think that it has Sacrifice a Treasure, become a creature until end of turn, and I always get really excited until I remember it doesn't do that, which is always a bummer. But Haste and Trample are good for reasons to sacrifice treasures. It's just a big vehicle that I don't think we care about. Declamation Podium I want to have faith in because it is one of our better, reliable, repeatable ways to make a pledge. I don't think it quite gets there, just because the equip cost is so high, but it is a repeatable way to make a pledge. Flags on High is a very good 2-mana make 2/1/1 effect. Pay 1 in a red, sacrifice it, target creature you control gets +1/+1, gains haste until end of turn. I don't think we have a deck that wants multiple of these, and unfortunately, the deck that white wants a version of this is gonna play Razelet Meditation. Unfortunate. I do really love Flags on High. I don't think it supplants Razelet Meditation, and I don't think a deck currently exists in Pauper Eternal that wants both. Hazak Commandos is not really a Pauper Eternal card. Hired Shot is, I think, one of our worst cost-reducing open fires. Don't we have strictly better Flags on High in DOV? I don't recall if that is common or uncommon. Create to MV2 color red. It is uncommon. I will say, Spirited Protest, 1 less mana to sacrifice and give something haste. I don't think that's strictly better by any means because the +1 power from Flags on High is very relevant. But it is uncommon. That being said, because this is an uncommon, we have not gotten to see how competition for Razelet Meditation slot impacts Meditation's presence. So it is possible that I'm wrong and Flags on High and Razelet Meditation can coexist, or that some copies of Meditation give way to Flags on High because it can rush out a threat later on in the game. So who knows? Maybe I am wrong, and maybe Flags on High does start to supplant Razelet Meditation a bit more. Yeah, Hired Shot I think is one of the clunkier open fire effects we have as far as cost reducing ones. We do have some good artifact sources. Unfortunately, those are ones that produce a ton of mana, and they're called Monument to the 30, and they don't really care about cost reducing this by 2. They want to play bigger removal spells that can use all of their mana. So unfortunately, not super relevant. I do like this card. I do like this card a lot. It's just, I don't think it has a home. Inflammatory Declaimer is another awkward approval card. I do think this is probably one of the better approval cards for Pauper Eternal, just because this is something that just enters and burns your opponent for like for like 1 or 2. Is that going to be a reason to reach for it? Probably not, but I don't know. I like these idiots that you can just keep blinking in and out of play and killing your opponent that way. I am a known red dragon enjoyer. That is one of my favorite Adventures in the Forgotten Realm cards. Is just dummy 4/4 flyer that burns your opponents for 4. This is not quite that, but it is a common, so it is an option. Main Street Hula Gang, I think, is not quite something that matters too much. But like if you end up in like a red green mid rangey deck, this is something that can both be a like 2/1 trampler that you just play early, get something on the board. If you can buff up its stats, trample is very nice on it. And this could also just be something that like picks off an opposing creature in a pinch. I think it suffers for being the same breakpoint as Fashion Temples from Flesh, so it's something that people are going to be prepared for because they're building their decks with Fashion Temples from Flesh in mind. And so as a result, this thing will not get as much value because it trades with the things it's killing rather than making a 1/1, in addition to also putting a big creature in the graveyard that can be cast later and also get a removal spell while getting that big creature out of your graveyard. God, Fashion Temples from Flesh is so good. Reckless Jailbreak is a solid pump spell, but I'm not 100% sure this is something Heroic would want to reach for. Teaching something trample permanently is very nice, though. Resourceful Hireling, I think, is fine. It'll potentially have its niche, is just like make a treasure, but I don't think that's amazing by itself. Revolutionary Throng. It can be a 4/3 trampler if it's swinging with another creature that's got power 4 or greater. I don't think that super matters. Splintering Blast, I think, could maybe matter if there's like enough relevant menace creatures that this gets to be a 2/1. Like I said with that one black removal spell in Cyberos, 2/1s are very scarce in this field. So having something like this that can 2/1 your opponent could be nice. I don't think it's super important because it is 4 mana, but don't take your eye off of it. It could potentially get some experimentation. Up and Comer is, I think, not quite there. It is one of our worst looter effects in terms of looters you want to play. It's fine. Clix of Island has the best looter in the format. It doesn't need to have 2. Anesthesiologist is an interesting sideboard card. I've seen some people chatter about it. Can just be a way to gain life repeatedly in these like green-white decks. I don't think it's amazing, but I know people are experimenting with it, and it's a scaling threat if you've got a white permanent in play. So that is very relevant. A 2-mana creature that scales is nice. The fact that it doesn't get its +1/+1 counter until the second time it attacks, though, is very awkward. The fact that it swings for 2 on the first time it attacks is rough. This is one of the best Teach cards, though, in my opinion. Bouncers for Hire is a bit rough. I don't think you really want to play a vanilla 3-mana 4/3. I think you especially don't want to play a 3-mana 4/3 that can't always attack. That's rough, but it's a 4-power creature. It's not nothing. Doesn't die to Fashion Temples from Flesh. Does die to all the 3 damage breakpoint stuff, though. Demolition Team, I think, is just too expensive. It's got the same problem as some of the other Enter Teach effects. Escalated Tensions is, I think, just not quite where we want to be on like X-cost spells. There are some really good X-cost spells in the format for like big mana outlets. This is not one of them. Gerrymanderer is not one of the approval cards that I think is even remotely worth playing. It's cute. It's funny. I don't think it's worth playing in Pauper Eternal. Idealistic Voter, I think, is maybe the most playable of the Enters Make a Pledge cards just because it's got reasonable stats for the cost. But we talked about the Grixis colors are the best to Teach colors. Green's got good cliques for sure. I think like white is in the worst spot overall, and white's still got like reasonable access. Green's got some good ones, but I don't know. I think this is the best shot of all of them to see play, and I still don't think I would expect this to see play. Inner City Scout. Amusing myself with my own verbal flubs. It's great in both. It's in both pump cliques, and it has trample. If it was an attacker, maybe. If it was pledge on attack, it'd be messed up. Anyways, Inner City Scout, 2 mana 2/2 gets +1/+1 and untaps itself as a. It's not heroic. What's the fucking? Is it Vanguard? It's the Bloomborough one. Valiant. It's a Valiant trigger. We've been calling it heroic triggers, but in Cliques of Island, these cards are Valiant triggers. It's, I think, the best of these effects in Cliques of Island. This is something you could potentially see play in Heroic. I don't know if that is a deck that wants to be in red-green, or if it just wants to be in red, or red plus a different color other than green. This is a good reason for it to be in green, though, I think. International development is, it's fine. I think we have better auras that ramp mana, but I do think making a pledge is really nice because it creates something that gives you an outlet for that mana. Unfortunately, green does not have the best outlets for that mana in like big mana decks. Outside of like tapping down your opponent's creatures so that way your big idiots can swing in, and I don't think that's a deck that, like, if you're playing a big idiots deck, I don't think you play international development anyways. Invest, I do genuinely like. Whenever enchanted creature attacks, you create a treasure. So 1 mana investing, no pun intended, putting 1 mana into this and swinging in with the creature that it's on makes that mana replaced immediately. And then if the creature would die, instead you sacrifice invest and return that creature to its owner's hand. That prevents death triggers. But I believe that also importantly means that something like Crimson Finale, because they're both replacement effects for the creature to get exiled or returned to your hand, you get to decide which replacement effect applies to the thing, so you can just return it to hand and get rid of Invest, and not lose your thing permanently to Crimson Finale, which is nice. I think this is one of the better reasons to care about Heroic. I think this is something to care about for the double spelling deck as well. Because it is something cheap that helps refund mana so you can double spell more consistently. It would never make my final 60, probably be one of the last cuts. Yeah, I can see how it very much feels like the 61, like the 61st card, where it's like you can't quite bring yourself to put it in the main. I'd like to experiment with it a little more, like a 75, but I'm not super confident. But I do think it's worth trying. Mana Harvesters is one of our best mana dorks. 2 mana 1/2. Taps for 1 mana of any color, and when you cast a multicolored spell, you untap it once each turn. This can essentially just tap for 2 mana over the course of a turn, so long as you have multicolored spells. Now you might be thinking, this is a commons format. How many multicolored spells could you really reasonably have? Hybrid cards. Hybrid cards are multicolored spells, and we've got some good hybrid cards. So, Mana Harvesters does have some very real applicability there. There are also a fair number of sets with just straight up gold commons. We've got a cycle of gold commons in Karsus. We've got 5 gold commons in Cliques of Nylon. We've got a handful of gold commons in both Exalted Twiltree and a handful of gold commons in Kitsuo Dusk of Time. So they exist. They absolutely exist. But I think hybrid spells are really the real boon for Mana Harvesters, because you can just play like the reasonable hybrid spells and still have access to Mana Harvesters being 2 mana in 1 turn, which is really nice. Yeah, I love Mana Harvesters. This card is so good. It's one of those reminders where it's like, there are so many cards at higher rarities that I love. It's so nice to come to Pauper and think about, like, there are so many commons in these sets that I adore as well. Ram Through. We have Ram Through in this format. Don't forget we have Ram Through in this format. If you have a big trampling idiot, we have Ram Through in this format. So don't neglect that. That is a standard reprint that we have access to. Or that is an official Magic reprint that we have access to, rather. Ruinous Discovery. This is the card I was talking about with regards to the 2 and a white version of this in Cyberos, this is 1 mana less. It's still a sorcery, but it's draw a card and you gain 2 life rather than 2 and a white just to draw a card. I think Ruinous Discovery is a very real card. I think this is a very nice way to try and rein in the value of those subroutine generators. I don't think it does enough to stop the subroutine spam decks on its own, but it is a solid piece of sideboard tech overall. And I do think the payout of blowing up a token with this is very nice. Test Subject Alpha, I think, is just a bit lackluster overall, unfortunately. Triumphant Herd is one of the better big idiots to put into play because it's just a 6 mana 7/6 that gains you a bit of life. I don't think it's something I will be reaching for in a deck that wants big idiots, but it's not awful. We are at the gold cards. I mentioned there were gold commons in this set. Diplomatic Alliance is a 5 mana aura that gives +2/+2 and can potentially give 2 creatures +2/+2. I don't think it gets there. It's 5 mana. There are also 3-color gold cards. I forgot about that. I genuinely forgot that there were 3-color gold cards. One of these land cyclers is, I think, one of the actual best big idiots in the format. Hazak Ambassador. We have a cycle of 3-color cards that basic land cycle for 1 mana plus a mana of the color of the middle of the trio. So Hazak Ambassador is blue, black, red, cycles for 1 and a black. You go to basic land. It's a 4/3 with flash that gives a creature death touch until end of turn when it enters. I don't think it's especially relevant. Legislative Gridlock is maybe playable. 3 mana counterspell unless its controller pays 3 or you gain 3 life and draw a card. I'm not crazy about it, but it is potentially applicable. Yeah. Talked a lot about good hybrid in CYB. There's a bunch in CNY as well. Yeah, exactly. Mutinous Insider, I think, is not quite great. 5 mana 3/3 trample is really rough. The fact that this is whenever you attack, not whenever it attacks, is very nice. So you get the +2/+0 and trample to one of your attacking creatures immediately. But it is still a 5-drop, and that's pretty rough. Patron of Arms is another rough looter, rummager. Discard a card if you do draw a card, 3 mana 3/2 menace, and it requires you to have sacrificed a permanent. Penwrath Ambassador, 5 mana 5/2, enters target creature must be blocked this combat. Each combat this turn if able, and target creature can't block this turn. Or land cycles for 1 and a green. I don't think it quite gets there. Silliman Ambassador is maybe one of the better ambassadors. 6 mana 3/3, land cycles for 1 and a white, or when it enters, you distribute 3 counters on up to 3 target creatures you control. Only ever 1 counter per creature, so it's not amazing, but this is like a decent board stabilizing effect in these colors. I don't think it's something you necessarily reach for, but it's not terrible. Tyrael Ambassador is one of the better ones. 2 white, blue, black for a 3/2 human advisor. When it enters, you may return target non-land card from your graveyard to your hand. You lose life equal to its mana value, and it land cycles for 1 and a blue. This is just genuinely good recursion. The loss of life is awkward, but it's good recursion, and it's got a relatively fine worst case scenario of land cycling it. Or I guess worst case scenario is playing as a 5 mana 3/2 with no enter trigger. But I think it's fine. It falls into the passable category where I don't know if that's good enough for you to be actively looking to play it though. Traumatic Recollection is fun. I get to pull up one of those Karsus commons real quick. Fractured Psyche we had in Karsus. It was blue and a black. Target player mills 3 cards, and target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is the greatest number of cards in any graveyard. I played a full playset of this in my blue-black Diabolical Minion deck last time around. It was the one card that required blue mana in my main deck, and it gave me access to a very reliably good removal spell, especially when my deck was also otherwise leaning on graveyard synergies. So now we have Traumatic Recollection, which mills 1 less card and only mills you, but it's a May, and it destroys a creature if its mana value is less than or equal to the number of cards in your graveyard. So it does not matter how much stat spam your opponent's up to, they can have a Eager Hatchling that is flipped into a 4/5 and it's got 3+1/+1 counters put on it after the fact. They can have a 7/8 flyer. If you have 1 card in your graveyard, you don't even have to mill yourself, this kills it. I think Traumatic Recollection is a very good reason to be in blue-black. It's a very good reason to have Graveyard Matters themes, and you don't even necessarily have to care about Graveyard Matters themes. You can just crack a basic fetch land and be at 1 card in your graveyard, and then mill 2 more cards, and this kills any 3-drop or less, which is a good number of the relevant threats in this format. Sorcery stinks a little bit, but I think Traumatic Recollection is very good. Take it from me, I got to the top cut with Fracture Psyche, and it was very good there. And I think I'm inclined to say Traumatic Recollection is better than Fractured Psyche, even with this milling 1 less card. Just because this kills things much more consistently. So yeah, play this card. If you're in blue-black, play this card. It is a good removal spell. Anyways, here's the best basic land cycler. Vishanki Ambassador is a 7-mana 7/7. When it enters, it's a Siege Rhino effect. Opponent loses 3, you gain 3. Land cycles for 1 and a red. We will get to why this matters. Actually, we don't even need to really dig for it. This is one of those reanimation threats. We do not have a wide dearth of incredible reanimation threats that we have at uncommon and above in both current standard and in the format's history. Coalesces are mana value 2 or 3. Exactly. Coalesce spells, big stats, mana value 2 or 3. Traumatic Recollection kills them. This card's very good. If you have your own Coalesce spells, this mills your own Coalesce spells. It's so good. So, Vishanki Ambassador, reanimation, we don't have a ton of options for incredible reanimation threats. So I think it comes down less to what's the most important body we can get in play with a reanimation effect, and what are the best bodies that can get themselves into our graveyards without us having to build the deck around getting them into the graveyard. And Vishanki Ambassador helps fix your mana, helps you make sure you're consistently hitting your land drops, so you can get to your reanimation spells, stabilizes you a little bit by gaining you 3 life, hitting your opponent in the process, and is a goddamn 7/7. I don't think it is the single best thing to reanimate, but I think it is absolutely something that if you are looking to play reanimation spells, you are looking to try. Certainly, I think it is the best of the land cyclers. For hybrid cards, Debt Collectors is, I think, a little awkward. 3-mana 1/3 Death Toucher. It spits out Treasure Tokens, but I think that's just too slow. Strathian Philanthropist. We talked about a 3-mana 1/2 Lifelinker that, like, or 3-mana 1/2 that puts a counter on itself or another creature and eventually gets lifelink. I think this is not quite that. Ignited Soul is the best looter in the format. 1-mana 1/1 Menacing Human Soldier in black or red. When it deals combat damage to a player, you may discard a card if you draw a card. This is nothing new to you. If you've played Revolution at all in the last 2 years, this card is going to be known to you. This card is good. If you've played enough Revolution, I guess, because it is possible that you have missed this card existing at some point. I think this card is pretty ubiquitous to the format. It helps that I have played a lot of it. Yeah, this card is very good. I think it will absolutely have a presence in Pauper Eternal. Pinnacle of Progress is, I think, a very real thing to try. We do not have a high density of permanents that are not creatures that enter with a bunch of counters in specifically common that we do at uncommon in particular. So Pinnacle is a lot harder to cheat into play, but if you can rush it into play, it is a 5/5 with Ward 2 for 2 mana potentially. I have been a believer in this card for the longest time. I have not been rewarded for that belief at any point. But I will continue believing until proven otherwise. And stop telling me I've already been proven otherwise. I will continue to not listen to you. Project Overseer is, I think, one of the more negligible ones. 2-mana 2/2 that just surveils 2. Proletarian Rabble is just 4-mana deal 4, and if your opponent has blockers, they can soak up some of that damage. If they don't want to soak up any of it, then I guess you could try and deal 4 multiple times, but Rooftop Whistle Silencer is just a 5-mana 3/3 flyer with flash. I don't think that's super relevant. Senate Filibuster is a tapper for 3, and it's a 1/3. I don't think that's super relevant. Trailblazer Anarch is not awful. 2-mana 2/1 for a striker. As long as it's your turn, it attacks really well. It blocks pretty poorly. But that's kind of the nature of what this kind of card wants to be anyways. I'm not super sold on it. Volatile Sergeant, also not one I am super sold on. 2-mana 1/3. It's like, there are not a ton of hybrid cards in CNY that I'm super confident in, but there's Ignited Soul, which is like one of the best 1-drops in Revolution's history. Not the solidly best one by any measure, certainly not the best one, but I think it's in like the top 10 1-drops in like 1-drop creatures in Rev's history, and it's a common, and it's in our format, so it'll see some play. And then we have the pledge lands. The pledge lands are the last thing to talk about here. Tapped duels that you can tap for one of two colors or make it have them make a pledge, and they retain pledge based on their color identity. So the allied pledge lands get access to 4 pledges. Because there are 2 that their allied pairing shares. And I think the enemy pledge lands are the ones that are really important because their 2 colors only share a single clique, which means each of their 2 colors gives access to 2 cliques the other color can't. So something like Urban Sunscape, where it's create any red or white or red clique enchantment token, is just create any clique enchantment token. There are all 5 available to Urban Sunscape. All 5 are available to Looming Skyscrapers, which is, I think, the one that's seen the most constructed play. All 5 are available to Groupthink Tank. They're all available to Controlled Ecosystem. They're all available to Bustling Motorway. So I think those are the most flexible. Those are the most powerful of them. But certainly I think the allied ones, you still get 4. So it's not like you're doomed by any measure to miss out on one. They're still flexible. Just I think the enemy ones are more powerful because you get all 5. There is the most freedom. So yeah, that is Cliques and Nylon. Let's move along to Chiku Chaos Reigns, and we're going to really have to pick up the pace because holy shit, we have been here for a little bit. This might have to be a multiple stream day thing because holy hell, this is the 3rd set of 9, and I've been live for how long? I've been live for over 2 hours. Yeah, this might be a tough. YouTube chat no longer loading for me. Just wanted to mention that 1 toughness means dying to ranks unmade, which will definitely be relevant for the Cyber Soul 1 drop. Oh, that was well over an hour ago. Okay, it was like 2 hours ago almost. Good to know. Yes, ranks unmade will be relevant. 1 toughness hurts a lot with that in mind. Other than the Selesnya Pledge land, they are all good. Yes, the one that cannot get you Hazak Arsenal is the one that's awkward. All right, let's go through GQ a little faster, and then I might have to wrap up at the end of GQ and just promise that I will make an effort to revisit this, because it sounds like Errors in the Left, Kitsuo, Exalted Tool Tree, Solistair, Innistrad, Valir. I'm not getting through all of that today. So I might have to go back and label this as part 1. Good lord. Anyways, Armored Raptor is too expensive to be relevant. If it were not 5 mana, even if it were just like 4 mana, I think I'd be more keen on it because enter artifact draw card is nice. But 5 mana is just, I think, a bit too much. Brief Stop is stupid because it's a card we have 2 copies of. Exile up to 2 target creatures, enchantments, and or lands you control. Then return to the battlefield under their owner's control. So exile, return. We also have Survey What's Left. This requires exactly 2 targets, but you can target land, so it's not that big of a deal. Exile 2 target creatures, enchantments, and or lands you control, then return this card to the battlefield under their owner's control. So these both do almost exactly the same thing. The only difference is that Brief Stop does not require you to make 2 targets, but again, you can target lands, so it's not that big of a deal. We have you can play potentially up to 8 Ghostly Flickers, and importantly, they blink enchantments instead of artifacts, which if you are playing official Pauper would be a drawback, and you're playing Rev Pauper where a lot of our best enter triggers are on enchantments, not artifacts. So these are great. These are stupidly good. One of the only Pauper decks I've fully mocked up a list for so far is a deck leaning on Brief Stop and Survey What's Left. I think I have 5 copies in the main, but just the fact that I can have 5 instead of 4 is nice. It's very, very appealing. So, yeah, Brief Stop is very good. Capricious Cat is something I keep wanting to be confident in. Yeah, Omens, Meditations. We have... Yeah, we have Omens, we have Meditations, we have all of the available Rifts from Karsus, we have other enchantments, Dark Covenant. There are some very good enchantments. We have the fucking 1 mana hand attack. We have 3 different, sorry, not 3 of them. We have 2 different 1 mana target player discards a card enchantments in we have Maddening Maw, which is one of the rifts, and then we have It's Just Business in Valier. So like we've got some hand pressure things that you could just keep blinking, and you can draw step lock your opponent if they're hell bent. Don't tell the curators that this is possible, but it's absolutely possible to get draw step locked in Rev Eternal. Not only that, you can get draw step locked while your opponent's also blinking something that generates them card advantage. So stupid. Anyways, Capricious Cat, acclimating twice is really nice. We will get to the weathers one at a time as we scroll through. I don't think all of the weathers are just like immediately things to write off. In fact, I think almost all of them are still great. I think the white one is the worst one for Pauper play, but I don't think it's just awful by any measure. I do think if you're acclimating, you want to be in at least 2 colors, preferably possibly 3, just to have more options out of a weather board. But certainly Capricious Cat acclimating twice is nice because it can just be get 2 weathers into your hand. It can be just get 4 mana 4/4. It's the flexibility is what's very nice with this. It can be a 4 mana 2/2 that gets you 2 cards in hand, 4 mana 3/3 that gets you 1, or a 4 mana 4/4 that is just good enough toughness that it's going to be annoying to deal with. Chiming Soul is bad. Cloud9 is a good acclimate card. It's a good sideboard card. Gaining 4 life and exiling an enchantment are both very relevant effects in this format. And acclimating, also good if you care about weathers. I think this is a reasonable sideboard card. I would not be opposed to people trying it in the main. It puts a +1/+1 counter on any of your creatures as acclimating. I think this could genuinely be a main deck card for experience, because it's a main deck utility card that can also just put a counter on one of your experienced creatures for 1 mana. And hey, the green weather puts a +1/+1 counter on one of your creatures. So if you have a non-summoning sick experienced creature with no counters on it, Cloud9, acclimate, put a counter on it, or Cloud9, get a weather, or sorry, if it has 1 counter, you can either acclimate with Cloud9 or put a counter on it with the weather that makes a 1/1 and then puts a counter on something. It's great. Falling Ashes is great, Sea Beers is great, Pollen is great. Yeah, exactly. There are some very good forms. I think the red weather is also pretty solid. So, yeah. Contest Spectators, I think, is not that great. Gone Pickin' is great. It is one of our aforementioned very good Banishing Light effects. It's not our best one because our best one's 2 mana. Because for some reason, Zangy decided that was a common and not an uncommon, and everybody found out that that was a common when Pauper was announced, and everybody lost their goddamn minds. But yeah, Gone Pickin' is still very good. Making a berry token is very nice. Freely equipping that berry token is very nice. And just answering anything on the board is also great. Heavy Snowfall is, again, I think the one that is the worst of the 5, but it is still 1 mana, give a creature +1/+1 and indestructible. This being sorcery speed is rough. It is why I think it's the worst. You can't use this as a trick by any means, but it is still a way to guarantee that you can safely swing in with a creature, which is sometimes necessary, sometimes desirable. Twice that symbol makes it really hard to distinguish common and uncommon. Yes, exactly. Which is why I think like everybody was blown away by it. Hungry Songbird is a 2 mana 1/1 flyer. When it enters, you make a berry token. This is almost applicable to the token, like the trinket token spam decks that I was talking about, but 2 mana is a bit of a bummer for it. So I don't think it quite gets there. Outlands Prowler is a 3 mana 2/2 first striker on your turn. Landfall gets +2/+2 until end of turn. See, I want to be a denier on this, but Heavy Snowfall with pre-nerf Tanky. Yes, I'm aware pre-nerf Tanky was stupid, and I underrated the hell out of it in my set review. I was also sick. So I have an excuse as to why I underrated the hell out of that card. I was so sick. My God. Anyways, Outlands Prowler is something that I feel like I want to write off as a joke, and also any basic fetch means this is swinging for 6 on turn 4. And if you could just keep finding basic fetches, this keeps swinging for 6, which is really nice. I don't think it's amazing, but it does hit like a freight train, which is something you kind of do want when you're playing these higher cost creatures in Pauper. Like, this is not a value card, so you want it to be a card that kills them. And this might be a card that kills them. Restless Sloth. 4 mana 3/3 vigilance. You could pay 2 and a white to make a berry and put it on the sloth. I don't think it's very good, but repeat berry generation is worth taking note of. The Ruins Awaken is, unironically, I think our new best 2-mana make 2/1/1 effects in Pauper. I think it is better than Raislet Meditation because of Landfall Make a Third Token. It gives you just the ability to have this spit more stuff onto the board. The fact of the matter is, this is Hordling Outburst, but you don't need it to make all 3 tokens immediately. You don't need to have 1 white up to make the 3 tokens immediately. Prowler is cool. Sadly, points to the big demon horror shaped sign. We've talked about it so much. I have not put it on stream. Let's just look at all the revelations real quick because Seaga's Blessed Light is fine. Not something I think you want to play in. Not something I think you want to play in XP, and I think that's the deck that you would want to play this in. Embrace Unending Frost is better. I think this is a very real tempo card because this kind of tempo effect is really good for denying blockers and making sure your opponents just can't stop you from beating their face. The Coalesce is a little awkward, but it is another instance of the tap effect in addition to putting a 2/2 in play. Grasp at Frail Dreams, one of historically our best card selection spells in the format, and it's a 4/4 that does it again from your graveyard. And then there's the one that everybody is concerned about, and I think for good reason. Fashion Temples from Flesh. It is a 2-mana -2/2 that makes a 1/1. I mentioned 2-for-1s are very scarce in a format like this. This is a 2-for-1 on its front side that can be cast for 7 as a 5/3 that does it again. Except it's a 3-for-1 because it is a 5/3 that gives something -2/2 and also makes a 1/1. It's very good. It is the reason to try and avoid 2 toughness creatures or 1 toughness creatures because this murderizes them and gets you so much value. I don't think it is an unbeatable card by any measure. Obviously, people really weren't on it at all last time around to my recollection, so it's not like this is unbelievable tech that people are just now finding. It's fine. It is a very good card, and it is something that people are going to be leaning on a lot. It's not unbeatable, though. But certainly, it is something that Outland's Prowler weeps about. Stitch Ephemeral Sinew, I think is pretty bad. Rekindle Orphic Memories, I think is pretty bad. Thrive in Exotic Chaos is maybe the other one that's very good. Not very good, just fine. It's a 3-mana ramp spell that puts the basic land into play, and then you coalesce it as a 4/5 that does it again. The best of these are Fashion Temples from Flesh and Grasp at Frail Dreams. And then, maybe Embrace Unending Frost. Yeah. Definitively not unbeatable, but it takes over, bails out games, for sure. Yeah, so this is Fashion Temples from Flesh, the card I've paid so much respect to over this stream that folks have generally been paying respect to since Pauper was confirmed to be coming, because it's a good card. Anyways, yeah, Ruins Awaken's very good. Swooping Hunter is, I think, just bad. We have returning your creatures to your hand is something that has been shown to be very good in this format. I don't think it's something that this card in particular is why you are looking to do. I think you are still looking to play either Cliffwalker, and the redeploy deck wasn't even on Cliffwalker. There were people who were playing Cliffwalker last time because 3-mana 3/4 is just a hell of a stat line. But again, the deck that was that did the best with this kind of strategy was on the 1/3 flyer. Let me just permanent flying Caravan Skyrider. This was the one that that the deck that did the best with this kind of strategy was on. 2 mana rather than 3 mana was just proven to be so important. So I don't think Swooping Hunter really quite gets there. Returning creature specifically also very awkward. These kind of decks really want to be picking up things like those enchantments that get enter value and get to be repeatedly useful. And Swooping Hunter can't do that. To the Last Breath is just not one of our better 2-mana removal spells in white. It's fine, but it's not where you want to be. Tough It Out is just not that great. Whispering Runt is just not that great. If you can spend exactly blue, red, white, then you're playing a blue, red, white, white 3/3 that gets you to spend more mana on it to give your creatures +1/+1. It is not good. Aquajet is fine, but not amazing. I do think Avert Disaster is worth thinking about. One blue, but if you have an Avert Disaster or Imminent Disaster in your graveyard, this is just proper counterspell is very nice. I think for graveyard relevant decks, having access to a proper counterspell for a slower, grindier deck, something like a deck playing Traumatic Recollection, like a blue-black control deck, Avert Disaster is awesome for a strategy like that. And I think Imminent Disaster is not embarrassing in Pauper Eternal, so I think that is a package that could see some real use. And also, we have pretty versions of it. We've got the shiny versions of both, I believe, and then Imminent Disaster also has a full art from Solistair, which is cool. Collector's Item is a very good removal spell in blue. It surveils 2. It reduces a creature to being a 0/2 with no abilities. There are decks that do not care as much about this. EXP does still get to buff up its 0/2 and keep any counters that 0/2 already had, but you can let your opponent flip an Eager Fletchling, take 4 to the face, and then reduce that flyer to a 0/2 without flying, and all of the counters they'd put on that to flip it are gone. So that's funny. And against most decks, this is just actually like a very relevant spell. Floating Familiar is not particularly playable. Flowmaster is not particularly playable. Herald of Drizzles is fine. It's, I think, one of the worst acclimators, but it is something that can do so if you need it. Illuminate, I think, is a solid draw spell, but it is one of the ones I'm less overall certain of because we do have a good number of these like 2-mana draw 2s right now coming into this format at common, and I think the one from Kitsuo and the one from Valir are both better because they are not reliant on you spinning with specifically 2. I think both of those don't fight for the same slot in their own decks because the one from Valir is wanting you to have hit your opponent, and the one from Kitsuo wants you to bounce one of your creatures before it hits the opponent. So they want to be in different decks themselves, but I don't think either of them gets pushed aside by Illuminate by any measure. Unfortunately, I do like Illuminate. I just think it gets nudged aside by cards that came after it. King of Currents is bad. Bad in Pauper Eternal. I think it's probably fine in Limited. Maybe. Lustrous Starfish, bad. Nimbus Dragon, it's bad. I'm not a big fan of Amity. You will catch that with every Amity card that we see. I'm just going to kind of brush past it for the most part. Like Placated Mind, I'll maybe give some attention to because it's double hexproof trick, but generally, if you need a hexproof trick, you don't really need to protect 2 different creatures from being targeted. So, we have better hexproof tricks. Riverbed Snapper is 2-mana 2/1. If you're in 3 colors, if you're in Sultai, this can be cast later on as a 5-mana 6/4 with Ward 3 that can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. This might genuinely be a real like control threat because this is 5-mana 6/4 out of the graveyard that taxes the hell out of removal and just can't be blocked by reasonable small creatures, which most of the format is reasonable small creatures. There are the odd 3-power creatures that could jump block this, but not many, and then you're still going down, you're still chump blocking with a 3-power creature, which is rough. So I'm not overly confident in Riverbed Snapper, but it's not terrible. Like, this is something I don't think you mind having die to a Fashion Temples from Flesh, or something you don't mind just chump blocking a dangerous creature with. Seabreeze is one of the better weathers. It's an unsummon for 2 mana at sorcery speed, but then you surveil 1, and you can get it out of your sideboard, so you don't have to risk drawing it, which is very nice. Seafloor Treasures is a very good card selection spell. I don't think it is necessarily better than... don't think it's necessarily better than Grasp at Frail Dreams, unfortunately, but it is an instant, and it is a lot cheaper to recast from the graveyard, so it's fine. Whipping Winds is 2 and a blue for a tuck spell, put something on top or bottom, and it's got Flash if you activated a non-mana ability, which is cracking a basic fetch. 3 mana for this kind of effect is not terrible, because it is traditionally 4 mana. I just don't think it's Pauper pedigree. Also, remember to sacrifice your weathers when another one enters. Yes, weathers cannot be in play with other weathers that are the same color. When a weather enters, other weathers that aren't the same color as it go to the graveyard, which is important because you can acclimate to get a weather from your sideboard or from the graveyard, which means if you are in multiple colors, you acclimate for one weather, you go put it into play, the other weather you already had in play goes to the graveyard, and your next acclimate can get that one out of your graveyard to your hand. So you can keep looping the two, which is the thing we talked about earlier about looping weathers. Zipping Lightning Bug is not a constructed card. Crunch is not a constructed card. Eager Scavenger is pretty good. 2-mana 2/2. Whenever you have landfall trigger, you surveil 2. It's just very solid graveyard filling, very solid card selection. Very good with basic fetches, of which Rev is known for some very pushed basic fetches. Of which we have 2 very good ones at common. We have Forgotten Foundation, which is probably not the one that you lean on a bunch. But there is also New Divide, which is just going to be a staple forever. And so in that regard, Eager Scavenger, very good with those basic fetches. Empty Shell. Additional cost to cast it, you may sacrifice an artifact. It gets -3/-3 until end of turn. If you sacrifice a permanent this turn, it gets -5/-5 until end of turn instead. I think this is a good removal spell in these sacrifice style decks. Obviously better when you've got artifacts to sacrifice, but it just cares that something's been sacrificed, not that it's specifically sacrificed something. So like cracking a New Divide lets this thing kill something with 5 toughness, which is nice. Falling Ashes, another one of those weathers. Exile 2 cards from a graveyard, then you gain 2 life for a single black mana. I think it's a very solid weather. Moving on. Horde is one of our worst draw 2s. We're moving on. Homesick is one of our worst Mind Rot effects. Moving on. Imminent Disaster. I mentioned Avert Disaster is just actual counterspell. This is the worst of the 2, but it's the thing that you kind of play out of obligation if you really want to make Avert Disaster reliable. And again, I don't think it's embarrassing by any measure. It is 3 and a black. Costs 1 less to cast if there's a card named Avert Disaster or Imminent Disaster in your graveyard. And then you exile a creature or planeswalker. Also, I just remembered something. I think, yeah, it was not showing the alt printing because it was special rarity. Let's check out Avert Disaster, because Avert Disaster, I believe, also has a special printing. But I guess Imminent Disaster did not have a shiny variant. Yeah. We've got Soul Stare versions for both of those, and there's also a Rev Renegade because this was in a GP winning deck. Yeah, so I think the Avert and Imminent Disaster cards are very good. This is a fine removal spell. At 3 mana, this is a very reasonable exile removal spell. Just guaranteed exiles whatever is in play. It is a draw go kind of spell, or it's a tap out control kind of spell, which is a bit awkward with Avert Disaster being an instant, but I think it's still good. I think it's still fine. I don't think you play a full playset like you do with Avert Disaster. I think you maybe play like 2 or 3 of these to like complement the rest of your removal suite. But I think collectively with Avert Disaster, this does do some good work. Iron Defense is an indestructible trick in black, which we don't have much of, but I don't think it's amazing. Lady of the Mists is a very weird, not amazing acclimator. Moonlight Adventurer is not very constructed angled, but very good if you're in Mardu Landfall, I guess. Pathetic Cocoon is one of our trinket token generators. 1 mana 0/2 makes a berry when it enters or dies. So solid in sacrifice decks, solid in trinket token decks. It's just got a good pedigree behind it. Better when it was a 3 toughness creature, but we make do. Certainly the berries are at least better than they used to be. Reaper of the Deep is a limited card. Relentless Bats is a gimmick card. I don't think Relentless Bats is going to work in Eternal. Certainly, I think if it was unnerfed, it would be a Pauper Eternal card. Worth trying. For those unfamiliar, it used to fully cost reduce if you had a Relentless Bats in play. I don't think it's gonna get there, but it is an option. Sandstorm Dancer, 3 mana 2/1. It is our best acclimator because it acclimates on landfall. It's got Death Touch, so it also just trades with anything. The worst thing about it is that you probably don't want to get a Weather the first time you landfall, because it is a 2/1. And even then, it dies to Fashion Temples from Flesh until your second landfall trigger where you put a counter on it. So it's very sluggish, and it's very vulnerable to removal. It's very frail, especially early on, but it is a potential value engine. Potential is the key word there. I think it is our best acclimator. It is a real gamble to lean on it for value, though. Starved Piranha is a limited card. I do not particularly care for it being surfaced. Brick Breaker is a limited card. Bubbling Fire Snail is a limited card. Burn Up is not one of our best X burn spells. Again, we have better X cost spells than something like this. Being able to pick off an artifact or a creature is nice, but I don't think it especially matters. Charge Beam is not one of our better removal spells. Dragon Dance is not one of our better pump spells. Eerie Sculpture is not one of our better landfall payoffs. Fluttering Firefly is an Amity card. Hone Claws is a solid heroic card. It is functionally a 1 mana version of those like 2 mana discard a card, draw 2. Sandstorm Dancer does at least a bait removal. Yeah, H-Good's entirely right there. Yeah, it baits the Fashion Temples from Flesh, and it gets the Falling Ashes that can exile the Fallen Temples of Flesh. Fashion Temples from Flesh, rather. Sorry. Yeah, this is one of those like discard a card, draw 2 effects that we're used to seeing, but it's 1 mana instead of 2. But you need to be able to connect to your opponent. It hasn't really done much in Constructed, but it could be cool. Kicking Foul is a 5-drop. It's got a cool ability, but it's a 5-drop. Magma Flow is an interesting Lava Strike effect, or Lightning Strike effect, rather. Single red enchantment, red to sacrifice and deal 3 to any target, or 1 in a red's discard and sacrifice to draw 2 cards. It can only deal 3 to any target as a sorcery. I don't know if it will see as much play as some of our other bolt effects, just because our other bolt effects can be 1 mana solidly, and also our other bolt effects are instants and sorceries, and some of our new things that care about these kinds of stuff call out instants and sorceries. So Magma Flow might suffer for that, but it's certainly not a bad card by any measure. Plucky Trainer is one of the reasons to genuinely care about landfall. It is a Steplinks. That's it. It's a red Steplinks. Poised Flame, if you have reasons to care about mana for abilities, this is Shock for 2 mana that then gets to pay for your next 2 mana activated ability, which is nice. It's not that great though. Psycho Hopper is a limited card. Sandstorm Devil acclimates when it enters and has menace as long as you have another a weather or another dragon. I'm not crazy about it, but it is fine. Solid Smog is probably one of the single best cards in Cheeky Chaos Reigns for Eternal Pauper, and it's scary because it is a red burn card. It's a 2 mana 2/1 with haste, and whenever you attack with it and exactly 1 other creature, you may pay red to transform it into Splitting Smog, a 3/3 with menace. And when it attacks, Amity is active. You can pay 1 in a red to give attacking creatures you control +2/+0 until end of turn. So the trick here is that this is not a 2-drop. This is a 3 mana 3/3 with haste haste and menace that requires you to have exactly 1 other attacker. And then it's a 3 mana 3/3 with haste and menace. And then the Amity ability on the backside is Flavor Text. Sometimes when you have like exactly 2 creatures and it meaningfully improves the amount of damage you're dealing, that could be amazing. Other times you just have other threats in play, like you don't need it. But if you do have Amity online, it's a great ability. Like it is one of our best Amity abilities on one of the best common creatures in the set. It's like it would be one of the best common creatures in the set with just menace on its backside, and it also has the best Amity trigger in at common in the set. So I would argue probably the best Amity card in all of GQ Chaos Reigns. In my opinion, that's not a huge bar to clear. I am not high on these like attack with 1 or attack with 2 creature effects. If this was just attacking with 2 creatures and not exactly this and 1 other thing, I'd be a little higher on Amity, but Amity does kind of hold itself back like that. You can resolve after attack triggers. If we had freedom, you could buff that, for example. I don't know what you mean by freedom. Oh yeah, no, I know what you mean by freedom. Like if we had a way for it to like for additional creatures to come in attacking, because this is an attack trigger, other creatures that come in attacking don't prevent this from flipping. Yeah, Solid Smog is just stupidly good. It's so good. It is going to be able to do some real work. Count on it. This card is good. Streaking Sunrise is one of the worst weathers. 1 in a red enters, scry 1, then impulse draw the top card of your library. You may play it until the end of your next turn. The reason why I think it's still great is because it's a single card impulse draw you don't need to put in your deck. You can have like 1 or 2 copies, probably just 1, in the sideboard. And then if you need more of it and you have ways to repeatedly acclimate, you can just acclimate for the weather that makes you sacrifice this, and then acclimate to get this back and impulse draw again. Sparks of Revolution. Yes, thank you, H Squid. It's been a hot minute since I've played Rev, so I forgot about Sparks of Revolution, but I did get there. I did figure out what you meant by that. Ace Tamer is a good amount of card selection, but it's a 5-drop, so I don't love it. Amateur Tamer is, I think, just a little too sluggish, a little too slow. I have said my piece on Amity. I think it is bad. I think this is one of the better Amity cards. I don't think it's great. Blind Pursuit is not a constructed card. Same with Buried Geode. Same with Canopy Creeper. Same-ish with Cheer On. This is maybe one of the better Amity spells, just because, like, it's potentially +4/+4, and untapping like +2/+2 and untapping both of your attacking creatures is like changes combat math, but I don't think that's super relevant for constructed. Foraging Grub might unironically be worth considering, just because it is a repeat berry maker where it only costs 2 mana to repeatedly make berries, and it's a death toucher, so it will kill most things that get into combat with it. Yes, you can sacrifice berries for black mana, 2 and a black, and put counters on it. That's, I don't think, what matters here. I think what matters is this in like a green-white deck, and then the black activated ability is flavor text. A Journey Begins we already had, but it's just cool to have the new art. This was a reprint. Shiny Hunted by Revolution. Whoa. Oh, right, because this was like the last shiny that we got, and it was a pain in the ass to get, and it just seemed to not be working, and so it was just everybody collectively shiny hunted it. That was a fun moment. Meteor Lover is a limited card. Padpole is a fine berry maker, but I don't think constructed relevant. Pollen Warning is one of the better weathers. 1 and a green, make a 1/1 that put a counter on a creature you control. We have seen so many different versions of this kind of effect of just like 2 mana 1/1 that puts a counter somewhere, and then this is that, but you can get it from your sideboard, so you don't have to put it in the main deck, which makes it very good. Scruffy Rascal, I am actually a fan of. 3 mana 1/2, mill 3 cards when it enters. You can put a permanent from among the cards milled this way into your hand. If you don't, you make a treasure. I think it's a really solid, really flexible card, not a constructed card. Stockpile is a potential win condition if you can just generate a shit ton of berries. 1 and a green makes a berry. Then you can sacrifice any number of berries you control to give a creature +1/+1 for each berry sacrificed this way, and then it fights a creature you don't control. So if you can spit out a ton of berries, this could just kill your, put enough stat bonus on one of your creatures to kill your opponent, and also kill the creature that might block your thing trying to kill your opponent. Certainly, white-green berry spam could be an option because we have that double striking Cyber Soul creature. If we're just spamming berries, we tap those to Cyber Soul the first striker into a double striker, and then stockpile, sack a bunch of berries, put a bunch of +1/+1 temp buffs on that double striker, and then just alpha strike your opponent. That could be cool. Probably not amazing, but something to consider trying. Temperamental Growth is a 3 mana ramp spell that lets you acclimate. I'm not crazy about it, but it is an acclimate spell, and those are generally solid. Thornfist Bruiser is bad. Claw Fossil is solid. 1 mana, pay 1, sacrifice target creature's base toughness 1 until end of turn, activate only as a sorcery, so Fashion Temples from Flesh can kill anything with this. The relevant part is also Surface for 2 and a black, transformed as Reborn Scuttler, a 3/2. Up to one target creature has base toughness 1 until end of turn. I cannot say confidently if this works retroactively with Fashion Temples from Flesh. That might be a thing I want to flag a judge about and then return to you next time I do this, because there probably will be a next time at this point. But yeah, this could be very real. It's not gotten its day in Constructed, but I do think it could be very real here. Creature Catalog, not so much. Figgyberry, not so much. Goldberry could be interesting in Artifact Sack decks. It does work. Base power and toughness is different from current power and toughness. So because it changed, if it's got -2/-2 and then its base toughness changes to 1, it retroactively then has -1 toughness? Hell yes. So my theory stands of like Claw Fossil in a Fashion Temples from Flesh deck is very real. It's very real for creatures like Graveyard Matter stuff. Also relevant, not just Fashion Temples from Flesh that this enables, it also enables Twilight Ambush on anything. Because it just guarantees that the opponent's creature has 2 or less toughness. Like, I think Claw Fossil could be very real in Pauper Eternal. Pauper Control. The blue-black control deck I'm talking about keeps feeling more and more real. Yeah. Goldberry, solid sacrifice fodder for an artifact sack deck. I just don't know how real that would be. Life Orb is not constructed relevant. Same with Living Compass, I think. Same with Magnetic Mystery. Root Fossil we have seen is a very good ramp tool, very good mid-range card. I would imagine if any sort of like ramp or mid-rangey deck tries to exist, this might be a thing worth reaching for. We have seen chatter about the 1 good 4-drop Orthcross Crusader, 4-mana 4/4 in black and green that has trample and enters gain 4 life, I believe. And this is another card that gets you to a turn 3 Orthcross Crusader. So certainly Root Fossil could be worth trying. It's just a good card. We've seen this be very good and constructed. And then finally, for lands, there are 2 different cycles. There is an enemy cycle of tapped lands that you can pay 2 and their colors to sack and draw a card that don't matter. And then there's also a pair, there's an allied cycle of check lands that check for their mutual enemy as a land type. We will get into this when we get to Voliere, that there are really solid type duels in the format now. In Pauper Eternal right now, so Calm Battleground and company really help enable wedge decks to exist in this format. So the mana is very good in Pauper Eternal. We will get to that in the subsequent streams where we talk about Errors in the Weft and Voliere. But mana has gotten really, really, really damn good in Pauper Eternal since the last time we played. I think monocolor decks will still exist, but we will have a much broader diversity of color combinations that can be playable. All right, that is 3 of the 9 sets, and it has been 3 hours of being live. I would love to move on to Errors in the Weft, and Kitsuo, and Exalted Twiltree, and Solisteer, and Innistrad, and Voliere. I'm glad I recognized that this would be way too much time invested to script a video around this. This has been way too much time to do all in one stream. So I suppose this is where I'm announcing, this is part 1. I will see when I have time over the next week to do parts 2 and 3. Shit. I did this to myself, I guess. So yeah. Thank you all for tuning in. I'll see you when I can muster the ability to do Errors in the Weft through Twiltree, and I guess we're doing 3 at a time. There's some very good cards in Weft, Kitsuo, and Twiltree, so we have got a lot of heaters in those sets to talk about. Until then, I hope you all take care, and I'll see you all in the Revolution chat, and I need to go rest my brain now. Bye-bye.